It's Fully Threaded Radio, episode 224.
Tariffs are massive. They're massively disrupting, honestly. It's huge crunch to cash flows. I mean, if you think about like 50% tariffs, that number, like to give you some perspective, on a monthly basis, you're probably spending more in tariffs than you are to run your business.
If you're selling a bunch of standard fasteners, commercial off the shelf kind of product, do you really want to have your distributor sole manufacturing source that so you can get an actual emissions figure?
If screws made in China, Taiwan, Turkey, and maybe South Korea have a higher default assessment applied to them than screws made in Canada or the United States, even though there's going to be a CBAM, tariff is not the right word. It's a duty of some sort because this is all calculated as it comes in through customs. Product that today is not competitive in the European market could be competitive with stuff made in.
It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the FCA sourcing network. If you buy, sell, manufacture, import, distribute threaded fasteners, especially if you generate any kind of carbon dioxide while doing so, well, this is the podcast for you. Hey everybody, Eric Dudas with you here, coming to you from semi-rural Northeast Ohio as always. Also joining us today, it's the return of the globe-trotting co-host of Fully Threaded, Brian Musker. Hey Bri, good to have you back.
And it's good to be back, even though I've come back into the frigid Arctic wastelands known as the Midwest.
Yes, but you still need your shades on, don't you?
Sometimes.
And it is bright out there. If it's anything like it is here, it comes up off that snow and really blinds you. Well, how was Harpo when you came back in? I bet he was flapping and singing the YMCA song and going crazy after you guys were gone so long.
Harpo was a little more muted because she'd already been put to sleep a few hours before we got back. Sydney was a different story, okay? He was all over us like a rash.
Well, that's Fastener dogs for you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure most Fully Threaded listeners are feeling the exact same way hearing you back. So glad you're here, and we'll jump right into this episode 224 of Fully Threaded Radio. Producing this one a little early in the monthly cycle because I'll be heading out to Chicago next week, probably crash in on the MWFA event, hang out with you, get some work done out there for a little while. But this is a big one, so we'll get right into it. We'll launch off with a conversation with Compliance and Logistics Vice President for Würth Industry USA, Danielle Riggs. Now, we're going to be taking a look at a podcast that was produced earlier by Fastener and Fixin' magazine covering the CBAM regulations in the EU, which went into full effect January 1st, 2026. This is a big deal over there, and people have a lot of ideas about it, a lot of thoughts, questions. This segment will zero you in. On the Fastener News Report, Brighton Best International CEO Jun Xu joins Mike McNulty. The FDI started the year on a strong footing once again.
Yep.
And we added some supplemental questions about CBAM on this month's survey. Plus, Mike's got all the headlines. I'll tell you, Bri, this is another one of these episodes where the Fastener News Report's like a show within the show.
Right.
They were on a roll this time.
Cool.
Today's feature segment, in some ways, is a continuation with our theme because the outspoken Charlie Kerr joins us once again, this time from the ski slopes of Lake Tahoe. He went out there on his annual ski trip, but as you'll hear, he's doing a little something different than skiing this year.
Sitting on the balconies, looking at people skiing.
And you'll find out why that is. Charlie Kerr fans are going to love this one. He was in rare form. On the Fastener Training Minute, what can you do when a part doesn't pass testing? In other words, you're facing a non-conformance issue. What do you do? Well, Carmen Vertullo lays out the options. That's the Fastener Training Minute. Plus, Marco Rodriguez with Cressa has our commercial real estate update, all coming up for you. The title sponsors of Fully Threaded Radio are Brighton Best International, tested, tried, true, Brighton Best, and Star Stainless. Right off the shelf, it's Star. Fully Threaded Radio is also sponsored by Buckeye Fasteners, BTM Manufacturing, Eurolink Fastener Supply Service, Fastener Technology International, Global Fasteners, InSequel Software, Cressa, J-Land Franco, MW Components, Solution Industries, Volt Industrial Plastics, and Würth Industry USA. Our email address is ftr@fullythreaded.com. Let us know what you think of the podcast. We appreciate it if you give the show a review. If you're a Spotify or Apple podcast subscriber, we're supposed to be asking for that more and more these days, Bryce. So
I know it's very unusual for us, isn't it?
Yeah, there it is. Like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. It's apparently extremely important that we continuously say that. So check that box. And while we're hat tipping all of our partners and sponsors, the new Link magazine came out last month, Bri, and I should have mentioned MW Components got the cover this time.
Oh, yes. The American Dream, 50 years. That's a great compliment to them, too.
Congratulations, MW. I have a feeling we're going to be congratulating Kara next time we talk to her, too, but
yeah, maybe.
Anyway, right, we'll just leave it at that for now. Also, we'll throw this right in at the top. Right around the corner, May 5th and 6th, Fastener Fair USA is coming up. This time it's happening at the Charlotte Convention Center, Charlotte, North Carolina, a city I know a lot of people are looking forward to experiencing.
Yeah, me included.
You've been all over the planet pretty much, but you haven't been to Charlotte. Is that what you're saying, Bri?
That's exactly what I'm saying, yeah. I've been to North Carolina, but I haven't been to Charlotte.
All right. Well, get your pith helmet out and pack it up. We'll see you there in May. Still time to get a booth. If you haven't gotten yours yet, give Blanca Delgado a call. I have it on good authority. There are still a few available. Not many, but a few. We've got a nice floor plan this year, Bri, and I see our booth location is not bad.
Cool. I love that show.
Fastener Fair USA has really turned into something. See you there. FastenerFairUSA.com. Registration is now open. Well, Bri, here's what I'm going to say. We should dedicate time on an upcoming episode in the very near future to debrief you on your recent travels. We have so much to put in on this one today. It would be like a 5-hour episode if we tried to do it today.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's good to have you back. Let's take a quick break, crank this one up.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you in just a moment. It's Fully Threaded
Radio.
Brian and Eric, your online Fastener Talk Radio brothers in thread. Fully Threaded Radio.
Hi, I'm Linda from LindFast, and around here, they call me the mom of the family. From stainless to metric to domestic manufacturing, our family provides the toughest industrial solutions you can find. If it holds your world together, my family makes it all. We deliver every order with precision, innovation, and the kind of reliability only a strong family can offer. LindFast Solutions Group. One family, endless solutions.
We all know this is about winning the war on notebooks. We can't do that without the ability to offer hard-to-find metric fasteners, manufactured to ISO and DIN standards. Delivered fast, faster, or as fast as your star-spangled man with a plan. Every quote you request, Eurolink fulfills. Help keep America's workers armed and ready with any metric fastener in the multiverse. With Eurolink, you get what you want when you want it. Eurolink, hard-to-find metric fasteners, delivered.
Brighton Best is proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with our trusted domestic partners, expanding our stainless offering with a full line of domestic ASTM F593 hex cap screws, 18 through 8, now in diameters from 1/4 inch to 7/8 of an inch, and lengths up to 7 inches. Tested, tried, and true, backed by American workmanship. These partnerships deliver quality you can trust, consistency you can count on, and domestic sourcing your customers will value. Brighton Best is investing in stainless and in the American manufacturers who help us keep our industry moving. Discover the strength of our domestic stainless lineup, including domestic stainless socket head cap screws 18 through 8 and domestic stainless A2 hex cap screws. Brighton Best, your one-stop shop for all things stainless, powered by American Partnership. We are Brighton Best International, Inc.
Hello, this is Tim Oakey with GL Hewitt. You're listening to the world's leading source of information on the fastener industry, the Fully Threaded Radio Podcast.
Brian and Eric back with you, shadowboxing the apocalypse. It was kind of apocryphal walking around the Egyptian ruins, wasn't it, Brian? I mean, did you stumble into a lot of Egyptian magic and sacred geometry?
Well, they don't really show that to the people, but what's more interesting is that everyone at some stage left their mark on it's had 3,000 years of people scratching shit over their monuments and temples and things, and the Romans couldn't resist chiseling things out, and the Greeks couldn't, and everyone had a go at trying to create bits of Egypt.
They don't tell you that the archaeologists were always unburying these big piles of wine bottles around the Sphynx and stuff, right?
No, they didn't tell me that. They did bury a big ship next to it, though.
Yeah, well, we'll get into all that, as we said, in an upcoming episode. Looking forward to hearing all about that. Back on the fastener front, many of you may remember that Brian and I also, in addition to fastener podcasting, dabble in the FCH sourcing network.
A really nice way of putting it.
You can see that at fastenersclearinghouse.com. One of the systems that is connected to that is the FCH Source Finder system. And I want to make a fast announcement here that we've been running this thing for many years, Source Finder this is, yet a lot of people who get the inquiries still come back to us and ask why they're getting these inquiries for parts that they aren't listing. I don't know how we're ever going to get this message across, Bri. So I don't know. This is just a public service message, but the Source Finder inquiries are broadcast RFQs. And we may be getting more of these messages lately because for whatever reason, towards the end of 25 and so far this year in 26, seems like a lot more of these RFQs have been coming through the network. Have you noticed that, Bri?
Yeah, I have, actually.
People are on the hunt for materials, and they know that FCH is a place to look. So we appreciate that very much. But if you're an FCH member and you're getting these Source Finder RFQs, don't be confused. We don't want to overload your inbox with stuff that isn't interesting to you. But on the other hand, a lot of people are doing pretty well with Source Finder. So it's something to understand clearly. FCH Sourcing Network. Appreciate y'all being out there.
And in our 20th year, actually.
Well, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, I know.
We need Rosa Hearn to help us out with that. Brian, maybe I'll text her and see what she can do. Who takes care of the extravaganzas around here?
Well, we're not really extravaganza people.
Yeah, well, if you saw the to-do list for Brisket Fest coming up, you wouldn't say that.
Yeah, I know. True.
We've got Danielle Riggs with Würth Industry USA coming up in just a minute. We'll be talking about CBAM.
And she knows a lot about it, too.
She does. In general, people connected with Würth Industry know what they're talking about. I was listening to the new Worth Knowing episode, their podcast, which is on YouTube. Quick question for you before we play this segment with Danielle Bry. Are you familiar with the RCSC, Research Council on Structural Connections? Have you heard of that?
I've never heard of it. Indicates how little I know, I guess.
I don't know. I never heard of it, but Christopher Tribble is the guest on this Worth Knowing episode, and he compares it like with ASTM. We'll have to have him on an episode and pick his brain about that a little more. I'll go back and play that Worth Knowing podcast. They really do a great job with that show on YouTube.
Well, I think that ASTM F3125 defines structural applications or structural bolting.
That rings a bell, yeah. But what this other standards organization, if indeed that's what it is, I don't know. We'll have to look into that a little more. Well, you got to listen widely, folks. If you want to pick all these things up in the fastener industry, that's how I do it, which is also how I got wind of this Fastener and Fixin' podcast.
Yeah, from your buddy in England, isn't he?
Well, I've never met those guys in person, but I listen. Let's take a listen to that right now and get Danielle's take on it.
Okay.
Danielle Riggs is Vice President of Compliance and Logistics, Würth Industry USA. She's become something of a thought leader on the subject of CBAM. She's here with me now. Hi, Danielle.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Could you believe I was looking over my shoulder November 2019, last time I spoke to you on the podcast? How did that happen?
I'm not sure how it happened. I don't remember how we were connected, but I remember it vividly. It was like the first time that I had to think about my voice being heard on like a recording, No one likes to hear their own voice. So.
Yeah, it's an experience for sure, but you did well then, and you've been really sort of on tour ever since. Most recently, actually, that's how your name came back into my mind. Craig Penland with Eurolink was on right at the end of 25, and he had just returned from the NFDA, the executive summit down in, was it Naples, I think you guys were?
We were in Key West, yeah.
Ah, yes, even farther. And you were a speaker, speaking about various compliance issues, but what he really took away was the CBAM stuff.
It is a big topic and a tough one for us to have to tackle in the distributor world, especially, right? With the reporting requirements and where the information has to come from. So, yeah, at least someone took something away from that conversation. I always love those. Someone listened to the compliance person, right?
Yeah, right. Well, you got his attention because he was actually, I don't know what's the best way to say it. He's concerned with what might be coming. And if you don't know what we're talking about here, the EU it went live on January 1st, 2026 here. It's their carbon border adjustment mechanism, and it's a big trick bag of compliance issues. Kind of makes the whole tariff thing look like a sideshow, Danielle, but we can let you listeners draw their own conclusions on that. And I'll just say that it came to the top of my mind when I received a link to a podcast that was put out by Fastener and Fixin magazine, which is based in the UK. And they put out an episode, which I will put a link for that in the show notes. Danielle and I are going to listen to a couple of outtakes from that conversation, which presents really what went live in January. And although there is nothing directly that is affecting North American fastener distributors and manufacturers, Danielle, I hope you can shed some further insight on this because I'm kind of learning as I go.
Yeah, so are we, right? So is everybody. But yeah, without a similar law here in the US that we're having to deal with, it's easy to think you're not affected as a US distributor, US importer even. But our customers, right, as you go into the supply chain, our customers are asking for this information. And so how do you get it, right? Where does it come from? What do you have to do to change your business model to make this work?
Right. Well, as we're going to hear, it seems like ripples from this are going to be far-reaching. Worldwide is the plan, as I understand it. Now, just to be clear, the EU has been working on this for quite some time, CBAM, and it went from what they were calling the transitional period to the definitive period on January 1st. And that basically means, as you'll hear in a moment, that now real money's involved, among other things. And then the UK, I guess it's slated to go live with a very similar set of regulations, January 1st of 27. And I'm going to be shocked if there's not things that are happening for a lot of other countries. I don't know about North America. Maybe you can clue us in after we listen to these clips, Danielle.
Okay.
So again, what we're going to hear now is a conversation between host Will Lowry and his guest on this podcast was Jamie McLeod, who I guess is a consultant working in this area, and he's helping companies in the EU navigate all of this. And I know you got a chance to play this before we turned on the recorder, Danielle, so this will be a refresher. And I'll note to everybody, I'm playing at speed and a half, and these guys speak very clearly, so I don't think you'll have any problem, but it'll speed it up. The first one's the longest one. The other three are pretty short. You ready?
I'm ready.
We now have the vast majority of what we were waiting on published by the EU just before Christmas. So they cover everything from the basics around the CBAM registry, around carbon pricing, but crucially, the two crucial areas where we now finally have not full certainty, but a lot more certainty is around default values and benchmark values. So the benchmark values is a crucial aspect of the CBAM calculation. Effectively, the benchmarks reflect the free allowances that are currently in place under the EU's emissions trading system for importers to also benefit from. When we didn't know where those benchmarks were set, we weren't quite sure effectively the percentage of free emissions that you get as an importer. We now have those benchmarks. But where I mentioned not quite full certainty, they're provisional benchmarks because the EU's emissions trading system are updating their benchmarks early this year in March, April time, and then we will get final benchmarks from that point as well. But now we have a much clearer indication of those benchmarks. That allows us to much more accurately predict what CBAM is going to cost. And then on the flip side, what we now have are definitive confirmed default values. So the benchmarks are relevant, or if you're using actual data, if you're going to a supplier and you're getting their actual emissions data, you can then incorporate the actual data, the benchmarks, any carbon prices already paid, put that all together, of course, with the EU carbon price as well, and calculate what CBAM is going to cost. If you're not able to get actual data, which is a real challenge, continues to be, then you have to use the default values, and we now know what that's going to look like as well. So we had this sort of real raft of information around the verification process as well, around the CBAM calculation. So we now have confirmed new boundaries for what type of emissions do and don't need to be included in the calculation. But crucially, the outcomes that I think most of us in the CBAM world have really jumped to straight away is what do the benchmarks look like and what does that mean for my costs? And what alternatively, if I'm not going to be able to get the actual data, if not maybe in year one, what do the default values look like? And that gives us a real understanding of what the commercial impact of CBAM is going to be. And just whilst we're talking about those values, just as an example, I was looking earlier today at threaded fasteners under, for those who I'm sure in listening to this podcast would know, under heading 7318 and 731855 specifically, the default values can be really high because what we have are country-specific default values that have been published by the EU. So just as an example, for those threaded fasteners, if I have actual data, my CBAM costs probably, and there's loads of variables here, I'm basing this on the carbon price right now being around 90 euros a tonne. That goes up and down, but generally it's going up. Based on actual values of approximately 2 tonnes of emissions per tonne of fasteners, you'd be looking at a carbon price, a CBAM cost of anywhere between 50 and 100 euros per tonne of goods. If I'm using the default values, if I'm sourcing goods from Taiwan, that would be more like 150 euros. If I was sourcing from China, it would be more like 500 euros. And Turkey, 400 euros. So we have these country-specific default values, which as you can see really vary significantly, but from certain countries, using those default values is going to be highly punitive.
Oh, that's nice. Highly punitive. Yeah. Danielle, what's your takeaway on that?
Well, so there was a point in time when we didn't even know if we were going to be able to use default values. So the fact that I've seen this come here at the end of 25 as an option that will still exist, right? So default values came into the conversation early on when they were kind of in the testing period of how this would work. And so at some point in the whole CBAM evolution, they weren't even going to allow default values to be used to calculate this, and you were required to provide actual data. So the fact that they're allowing default values still is a little bit of a relief for someone like me. The fact that it's going to be more expensive when you don't have actuals, I guess that's pretty much expected, right? But I mean, think about this from a distributor's perspective. The data should be actual. The only person who has that data is the manufacturer of the product. You may buy and sell that product from more than 1 or 2 or 3 manufacturers. And precisely what you report to your customer later on down the line, did your manufacturer calculate it the right way? Are we responsible in the middle for knowing that it was calculated correctly when we passed it on to the customer who passed it on to the importer in the EU? I mean, those are the things that come to my mind as I start to swirl in the panic bubble, right?
Yes. There are many country of origin questions that arise with this whole thing. There are questions across the board. I think you said it earlier before we turned on the mics. There's a chaos pattern here that's being imprinted on the whole thing, and it's oddly reminiscent of what we've been going through the last year, but in a completely different way for different pretenses. Well, let's jump to this next one. Again, folks, we're not attempting to discuss the whole CBAM question. We really want to point you towards this podcast that we are listening to here so you can get your feet wet if you haven't heard about CBAM before. And I think we'll be discussing this for a long time to come, especially when we think about whether or not the ripples will hit North America, which is where most fully threaded listeners are based and operating. Okay, the second clip, it's a little shorter, and it has to do with the verification process because, as we'll hear, only verified, let's see, how does this work? Sellers will be able to clear into customs through the EU. I guess that's what it is. So anybody who's selling into the EU has got to listen to this.
Yeah, so what this verification process in essence is driving to is that the numbers that the EU importer reports as their actual emissions data under CBAM are going to be third-party verified for accuracy.
Let's play that now, and then we'll talk about it some more.
Yep.
If you are an EU importer, or if you're an UK exporter and you're maybe a bit worried about the CBAM competence of your EU customers, the absolute number one priority right now has to be authorized declarant status. So I mentioned that EU importers have to have that authorized declarant status in order to import CBAM goods. Slight bit of leeway, yes, till the end of March, but we are already seeing at the border goods being stopped because the correct document codes on the customs declaration to either say I'm authorized, here's my authorization number, or to say my application is in, here's my application reference number, hasn't been available. Now, those kind of delays at the border, which ultimately sometimes can lead to goods being turned around and sent back, are hugely costly for businesses in terms of actual cost, but also the commercial relationship with those buyers as well. And we've seen this recently with a client of ours in Hungary. I've heard several other stories of other EU member states where immediately from the 1st of January, they have been very stringent in quite literally saying, if you're not authorized yet, or you can't prove to me that the application has gone in, your customs declaration isn't being accepted, your goods are not being cleared to move. So that would absolutely be, I can't really stress enough how important that is. EU importer, if you haven't got to the point of applying, please prioritize that. It's not simple. The authorities, which is managed by the member states individually, have up to 120 days. One of the applications we're helping a client with has been in for a couple of months now, and we're still chasing. They've told us a couple of weeks, so it's not a quick, easy process.
So anyone selling into the EU has to be very aware of all this, don't they?
I think more importantly, someone that is importing into the EU. As we're selling into the EU importer is going to need to figure out how they are supposed to declare with their government. And so I think what they're talking about there is the authorized declaration status. So being able to actually file emissions data properly and then obtain certificates as time goes on.
Right. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly, because I don't know if we're using different terminology. I'm not a professional in the compliance area. I don't like compliance in general, Danielle.
I understand.
But what I'm asking is, if I'm a manufacturer or a distributor in North America and I have a customer who's based in the EU, well, then they're importing from me. And so therefore, it's likely that I will have some burden put upon me to comply with all of this. I mean, am I getting that right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, so this is, again, something to be aware of. And my impression is that we're still in a world where a lot of folks have not heard of it, which is really kind of scary.
We really are. I mean, we've done, as the industry group here for Würth, we've done, I think, 3 different solicitations just from a supply-based perspective, asking if they're aware of this regulation, if they're able to meet it. And we have, even till today, getting more than a 5% response rate saying that they know what this is has been a struggle.
Wow, that's actually pretty shocking. I thought it would be higher than that, but wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get to this next clip. This one has to do with default values. And as you said earlier, Danielle, I think the strategy many companies think they're going to use is just to say, we're not even going to bother ourselves with trying to do these calculations. Nobody can figure it out. We'll just work with the defaults. But it sounds like they're going to be kind of high. So I don't know how that'll work. Let's play this and then we'll talk about it.
Depending on country, as I mentioned earlier, we see these dramatic differences depending on the sourcing, on where the goods are sourced from. But the default values absolutely will always be higher than the actual data. So if you cannot get that data, you cannot use it on the report. You have to go to default values. And that's where I think it does come into, in practice, UK businesses, EU businesses are going to have to help their suppliers on this journey. The more they do that, because it's in their own interests, the more likely they will be to, hopefully, even if it's not in year 1 at the beginning of 2027, maybe it'll be later in 2027, just in time for the report, or maybe it will be, right, we have to be hit with the default in year 1, but from year 2 we're going to be ready. The more chance they will be of absolutely, based on the last few years, there will be suppliers who aren't able to provide the data. If they can't do that, like I said, the option is default, but if not, it's absolutely about considering sourcing strategies and having supplier benchmarking as well. So even businesses we work with who have been able to, over the last few years, obtain actual data, now they're at the point where they've got a couple of years worth of data. I'm recommending that they now do exercises to benchmark those suppliers who are the most carbon efficient, who provided me with the data that I can rely on and actually have faith in. Which of those suppliers have told me, yep, I fully understand I need to go and get verified at the beginning of next year. So it's a bit of an exercise really in, well, not to be too harsh, but in sorting the wheat from the chaff and understanding that if I continue to engage with suppliers and source from suppliers who are either not willing or able to be CBAM compliant, I really should be looking elsewhere.
I don't think anybody likes the sound of that.
I know, right? This has been the crux of the discussions that we've had with our customers over the course of the last year and a half. I've kind of stuck really close to the EU Commission as they worked through this. So I got involved in discussions and learning about the regulation ahead of time. So when customers came to us and started the conversation about CBAM information, emissions data, it is a business model discussion, right? There's default values. Yeah, there's option number one, that's going to cost a little bit more money. But if you're selling a bunch of standard fasteners, commercial off the shelf kind of product, do you really want to have your distributor sole manufacturing source that so you can get an actual emissions figure? Because the fastener, the HTS itself is what is being assessed, the emissions going into the country, right? So if you're directly importing the fasteners, that might be a different answer into the EU. But if you're not, if you're using them maybe as just, let's say just from a repair perspective, so it's a very small portion that's going in there, do you really want a sole manufacturing source every standard fastener? I mean, the restrictions that come with that is, from a cost perspective, would be chaos, right?
Yep. Well, coding questions and, again, country of origin questions.
Yeah.
And let's not overlook another thing that's sticking out here to me, at least, and that's this whole supply chain transparency that the process will demand. I think a lot of people will be uncomfortable with what this would require. And I know the ISO process and everything like that, it requires quite a bit. This seems like another step.
Absolutely. I mean, almost to the point of just open book transparency, right? Because the information you're reporting for CBAM is the installation of the manufacturer. That has nothing to do with Würth as the distributor in the US. It is the manufacturer of that product. So you're, in essence, opening up your supply chain for visibility perspective for everything in the steel fastener world, right?
Okay, this next one's short, but, well, let's just play it and we'll talk about it.
All right.
The more you can go to suppliers and support them with, this is data I need, this is how I need it, this is when, really helping them to almost put it on a plate for them and supporting them to be compliant, the better. But initially, it's just about that initial outreach. Here's what's changed. Here's what I need from you. And if you can support them with standardized templates, for example, software solutions, like I said, have a role as well. That gives you the best chance of, hopefully, when it comes to time in about a year's time, receiving verified, accurate data from them. But definitely, we will find that some businesses are not able to do that, and CBAM will lead to some businesses, unfortunately, not being able to comply, and then the repercussions of that, both commercially, but also in terms of the regime itself, are severe. So just as an example, the penalty regime for CBAM is aligned with the EU's emissions trading system penalty scheme, and generally, that means a fine of €100 per ton of emissions related to that non-compliance. So the penalty regime in a worst case scenario is really severe as well. So it has to be compliant suppliers, compliant actual data, or default values.
So, full disclosure on my part, I really have no idea how much a ton of carbon actually is, what would be required to generate that or any of that, but it just sounds like a lot, and it sounds like a big headache, and I don't want to pay it. But
Well, I can't tell you enough how much I love this clip, because here's what I need from you is such a phenomenon from my experience. Most of the customers that are asking us for this information aren't necessarily concerned with us compliantly reporting it. They just want us to report a figure. And being in the middle, and the compliance person, right? Saying, hey, wait, this isn't what you can report. This isn't how this works. You need to educate yourself in the regulation to understand, but you don't want me just to give you anything. You need me to give you something accurate. And it is far more often today that we're having that discussion about, you're telling me to give you something that is not what you're allowed to actually report. And I don't want to do that to hurt you. Like, let's have this conversation. So this one to me was my favorite, because he's right. If a customer of ours, if we can tell our suppliers, if they can tell us, this is what we need and here's how we want it, boy, that would be beautiful.
we're speaking about the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism that went into full effect as of January 1st, 2026. This podcast that was played on fastenerandfixin.com. I will put a link to it again in the show notes for this episode of Fully Threaded Radio. And we're talking with Danielle Riggs with Würth Industry USA. And she's a thought leader in this area, very knowledgeable and learning every day, just like all of us. And hopefully this conversation, Danielle, is opening a few more eyes. We'll be talking about it in the future, I'm sure. But just before we wind up this installment, do you have any kind of a feel for really what kind of a wave might hit North American fastener operators? I mean, how do you really feel about this thing?
I feel like a lot of us are probably thinking that the default value is the way to go, and we're just going to get this kind of out of the way. The education that it's going to take to understand this regulation just across the entire supply chain is so immense. And I feel like we're really behind the curve here, at least from the North American perspective we sit in, right? These kinds of things, people in the EU have been paying for their own emissions that they output into the environment within their countries for quite some time now. And we don't look at things necessarily like that here. So it's just a big, I think we'll all go to this really easy way of just take the default value for the time being. But those of us that can get ourselves ahead of the curve and really get some education and capabilities when it comes to being able to report this information I think it was clip number 3 at some point, the default values are going to be so expensive and people are going to really be able to show themselves as a front runner when they can do this the right way, when they can calculate emissions properly.
Well, I guess the last thing I would ask you, Danielle Riggs, how do you keep your cool with all this? Don't answer that. I'm just so glad there are people like you out there, and I'm so glad that you joined me for this conversation today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I love to talk about this stuff, so anytime.
I'm going to take you up on that. Okay, folks, it's Fully Threaded Radio. Like it or not, we'll be back in just a moment.
At Würth, status quo isn't an option. Würth is a global supply chain solutions provider of fasteners, MRO, and safety products, along with value-added services like kitting and assembly, 3D printing, and engineering assistance. Find out what Würth can do for you at WürthIndustry.com.
Hello, my fastener amigos. This is Jake Valdez Davis with BTM Manufacturing. During our trade show off season, I found myself navigating the hills of Costa Rica in search of the perfect coffee beans. Just like BTM Manufacturing's commitment to service, finding the right beans matters, especially for our industry favorite U-bolt blend coffee. Whether it's domestic vent wire parts like anchor bolts, U-bolts, single end or double end studs, or great coffee, you can count on BTM to do everything on our end to deliver the absolute best. BTM Manufacturing, a commitment to service.
From thousands of in-stock fasteners, including NAS and MS hardware, to custom parts built to your specifications, MW Components delivers. With U.S. manufacturing across 8 locations, we offer cold heading, precision machining, fully custom solutions, and engineering support for challenging applications. From rapid prototyping to full production, we deliver the capabilities and scale for your most demanding needs. Learn more at mwcomponents.com/fasteners.
This is Marco Rodriguez from Cresa with your FTR Industrial Real Estate Update. If you've been reading the headlines lately, you might be getting mixed signals about the industrial real estate market. You might also be driving by massive warehouses sitting empty in the Inland Empire of California or Dallas. And yet, when you go look for your own 25,000 square foot branch location, you're getting outbid or you're just finding junky old buildings. This is a bifurcation we are seeing. In the big box world, those million square foot Amazon-style warehouses, there's a massive oversupply. But for the average fastener distributor, the world of small bay is tighter than a Class 3A thread fit. And here's what's happening. Let's look at the big box side first. During the post-COVID surge, developers went on a building spree, popping up 100,000, 500,000 plus square foot logistics centers everywhere. Now, as consumer spending has leveled off and global trade has shifted a little bit, that space is empty. In fact, large format warehouses are where we are seeing the highest vacancy rates. For most of the FTR audience, a 200,000 square foot building is just too big. Fasteners are dense. They don't need a massive footprint. You just need floor load capacity and efficient racking. The irony is that while the news says that the industrial market is cooling, that specific type of building is actually in high demand. So this brings us to small bay industrial, buildings in that 10,000 to 50,000 square foot range. This is the backbone of the fastener industry. It's where the local branch, the regional hub, and the value-added kitting operations live. So why is the market so tight, making it hard to find these types of buildings? First is replacement cost. It is incredibly expensive for developers to build small bay buildings. Between the cost of land, the number of dock doors required per square foot, and the local zoning headaches, most developers would rather build one giant box than 10 small ones. The second is the local factor. As a fastener distributor, you're competing with local service businesses like HVAC contractors, electricians, and specialty manufacturers that are all looking for the same 20,000 square foot buildings. Number 3, efficiency over size. We're seeing a flight to quality where companies are realizing they don't need more square footage necessarily. They just need better square footage. For example, a 30,000 square foot modern building with 32-foot clear heights allows you to go higher with racking and operate faster than that 50,000 square foot vintage building with low ceilings. So where do you fit? If you're an operations manager, you need to realize that you are competing in the most constrained segment of the real estate market. You can't wait until your lease is 6 months from expiring to start looking. In the small bay world, the best buildings are often leased before they even hit the open market. You need to position yourself as a high credit tenant. Landlords love fastener companies because they are stable, they stay for a long time, and they don't create a lot of mess when compared to larger manufacturers. So stop looking for the biggest box you can afford and start looking for the most efficient building you can find. If you want to talk nuts and bolts or roofs and walls, I'm Marco Rodriguez from Cressa. You can find me on LinkedIn or email me at mrodriguez@cressa.com. Don't forget to pay your rent.
This is Mike Robinson with Star Stainless, and you are listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
And it's the news segment. Mike McNulty will be coming up in just a minute. This time he'll be joined by Jun Xu with Brighton Best International. FDI started out strong, plus we have some supplemental CBAM stuff. Whet everybody's appetite for that with the last segment. What do you think, Bri?
I'm sure. Waiting with bated breath.
That's right. All kinds of opportunities to get excited about things in this industry. It's been a while since you've broken bread with fellow members of the industry, and especially if you're out on the West Coast. The Pacific West Fastener Association has their annual tabletop and conference happening. That's March 11th through the 13th. It's happening at the Westin Anaheim Resort in Anaheim, California. pac-west.org for this one.
Cool.
Congratulations to Mallory Nichols with Advanced Components, Bri. She's the new president of Pac West. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did. I saw that one of my rare moments on LinkedIn, actually.
Well, then you also might have seen there's another reason for congratulations. Welcome to baby Charlene.
Right.
The fastener industry's newest member.
Cool. Good.
Yeah, that's right. The Advanced family just grew a little bit. Congratulations, Mallory, on that as well. Maybe she'll be president of the YFP someday, Bri. It'll probably run in the family.
Yeah, maybe.
And I also got wind of, speaking of the YFP, Zach Williams with Würth. We had him on the podcast recently.
Yep.
He just got the nod. He's the new president of that organization. Congratulations, Zach.
That's good. I think I might have seen that as well.
He's got the eye of the tiger. Keep it going, buddy.
Yep.
The Fastener News Report has been brought to us by Würth Industrial Plastics for many years. Fully Threaded Radio listeners know that. Little sad news to share with you. Got this from Heidi. Sadly, Mr. Joe Voltrauer has passed away. He was the founder of Würth Industrial Plastics, an amazing guy, a real pioneer, highly driven individual, and I know the whole Voltrauer family and Volt Industrial Plastics family is feeling pretty rough right now. Our prayers go out to you.
Yes, they do.
We'll dedicate today's episode to Joe Voltrauer, and I'm quite sure he would want us to keep the screw turning. The title sponsors of Fully Threaded Radio are Star Stainless and Brighton Best International. Brian, I know you've been gone for a while. You probably forgot most of your passwords, and
that's why I have my iPhone for that.
Well, I know you remember how to do your next little bit of work here. So why don't you lay it on us?
Right. And now for news about screws that you can use, here's Mike McNulty.
Thanks, Brian, and welcome back. This is Mike McNulty from Fastener Technology International Magazine, bringing you the Fastener News Report, which is sponsored by Würth Industrial Plastics, makers of the world's finest plastic fasteners. The annual Great American Cultural TV Spectacle, the Super Bowl, is now complete for 2026. Separate from the championship football game, the accompanying commercials that cost about $10 million each and the combined total of $1.75 billion legally wagered online suggest to me that the USA is clearly obsessed with sports gambling, AI apps, and online entertainment. But I, for one, am still focused on fasteners and ready to deliver today's Fastener News Report. In this episode, Brighton Best International President Jun Xu joins us to reveal the latest results of the Fastener Distributor Index, also known as the FDI. Also on today's broadcast, we have our top story from Simpson Strong Tie, plus newsmaker headlines from Würth, Bolton, Rotor Clip, Prime Industrial Fasteners, American Ring, Suncor Stainless, Century Fasteners, Decker Manufacturing, and more. On the back page, we're going to talk about the changing world order. We'll get to all of that and the latest FDI results right after this.
Hi, this is Heidi Voltrauer with Würth Industrial Plastics, and there are 4 things that separate us from the rest. There is a difference: competitive pricing, fast lead times and delivery, no minimum quantity orders, and our customer service is above the rest. With a heritage of growth and hard work, Würth Industrial Plastics is committed to our customers and our future. You are valued. We take pride in our company and the products we manufacture. We welcome every opportunity to put our experience, technical expertise, and rapid response production capabilities to work for you. Contact a member of our friendly, knowledgeable sales team today to find out how we can help. You know the website, voltplastics.com. And come see us at Fastener Fair USA in Charlotte.
Looking for premium aluminum fastening solutions? Brighton Best International has partnered with Aluminum Fasteners to bring you an expanded lineup of top quality aluminum nuts, hex bolts, cap screws, flat washers, and split lock washers, all available and stocked nationwide. Engineered for excellence in solar, railway, electrical, and transportation industries, our aluminum fasteners offer lightweight strength, corrosion resistance, and lasting durability. Need something custom? Our mill department is ready to help. Find unbeatable fastening solutions at brightonbest.com. Tested, tried, and true. We are Brighton Best.
Mike McNulty.
The seasonally adjusted Fastener Distributor Index for January 2026 moderated to 52.0 after posting an outstanding reading of 56.4 in December 2025, seasonally adjusted. The forward-looking indicator, also known as the FLI, increased to 54.0 after a decent 51.2 in December. Fastener Distributor Index data is collected and analyzed by the FCH Sourcing Network and Baird. The FDI seeks to identify demand, pricing, and outlook trends within the American fastener distribution industry. To get some insight into these results, we're going to talk to Brighton Best International President Jun Xu. Hi, John. Thanks for joining us on the Fastener News Report.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me again.
You're welcome. It's good to have you back. You've been on the show a lot and giving your insight on the FDI. What do you think about the results this month?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one reason why I like to start at the beginning of the year is because things usually start off pretty well. So I think January typically is a good month. because people are restocking up their inventories from, end of the year, from the year prior, and people are generally optimistic. So, I mean, I think the numbers are accurate. I think the market, is, fairly healthy right now. What actually worries me a little bit, if we kind of dissect the numbers a little bit, and maybe some of it's more towards like what I see in the market, is that, what's been doing well is construction. I think we see these data center projects going up everywhere. Certainly we see that in our numbers, and construction is taking an outsized portion of what we sell, I think, on a monthly basis. MRO, I think, is always stable. That's by definition, it's a very stable chunk of business. But, where I see some contraction actually is in manufacturing. I think the manufacturing sector is still slow. And I think that's hidden a little bit in these numbers, because the overall numbers are positive. Because I think, again, that slowdown in manufacturing is being taken up by the increase in construction. So I think, between the three buckets that we look at, that's kind of the trends that we're seeing.
So on the construction, is a lot of that related to data centers?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think
wild thing.
Yeah, these data centers are being put up, and it's not just the data centers. I mean, it's the data centers and everything that goes around it. So I think of data centers as like there's really four major buckets to data centers, right? There's the external building that you have to put up. There's the inside of it, right? All the cabling and wires and accessories that go around, organizing the servers, the racking, all that stuff. Another thing about data centers also is that it takes an enormous amount of electricity. So I think I mentioned this before. I'm not sure if on the show or not, but, an AI search takes 10 times more energy than a normal Google search. And when you're building these data centers, they're taking as much electricity as an entire city. So, cities and these data centers are actually fighting for energy. And what these data centers have to do then is basically build their own utilities plants. They're putting up a lot of generators, spending a lot of money in producing their own energy to fuel these data centers. And the fourth bucket to this is, with all the energy being used and generated, well, that's a lot of heat being generated. And so there's a lot of cooling, that has to go into these data centers as well to dissipate that heat. I think those are really the four major buckets, that affects construction in terms of what we see with these data centers. But it is a tremendous amount of money being put in. I mean, I think I read somewhere that, they want to put in $5 trillion of investments in the next 2 years. That's crazy money. Like that's monopoly money. I don't know how to.
Right. Where does it come from?
Yeah. So, that's the other question. I mean,
stock market gains, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think eventually it's going to crest, because you look at right now, people are just putting money in because they feel like they have to put money in. And I feel like, a lot of these players, not everyone's going to win. There's going to be maybe one or two winners, in this. And ultimately, I mean, if you're an investor and you're putting this money into all these different data centers, you're going to ask, like, when am I going to get my money back? What is my return on this? And ultimately, the business case is going to be based on what is the value creation of these data centers, so AI, we use it to take notes. We use it to, what am I going to look like when I'm 80 years old? Or what are my kids going to look like, when they're 30?
Yeah.
Like my kids like to watch dancing cat videos, right? So
it's all fun, but
yeah. But like, does it make money?
Right.
Like, and when is it going to pay for this thing? And actually, another thing that people don't really think about a lot with these data centers is there's also a lot of obsolescence risk, with technology, right? Like, we're not talking about nuts and bolts that haven't changed, in terms of, the mechanics and mechanical properties for decades. Electronics, especially servers, has obsolescence risk. So you're putting all this money into all these servers that may not work in 3 to 5 years. And what are you going to do? You're going to, keep reinvesting all this money. So there's a lot of questions that are open-ended in my mind with AI. It is a massive wave. And I mean, I think as a company, what can you do? You ride the wave when you can, right? But don't be surprised if the wave crests. That's all.
All right. Well, that's good advice to temper all the exuberance, because definitely a lot going on there. So the construction is really doing well. MRO stable, and manufacturing is contracting. We'll get to the PMI number in a few minutes here, but let's dive into the FDI numbers. Even though we're still above 50, all the numbers went down. Sales, supplier deliveries, inventories, and pricing all went down, and employment went up, which was the opposite of what happened in December. So anything jump out to you on those numbers?
I think, again, it's really just, it's like a two-track economy right now. If you're working on data centers, things are great. And I think pretty lofty. If you're not touching that market, I think it may be, stable or down. So I think it's hard to read into the tea leaves with all this, but I do think that's why you see some of the split between things are doing well and maybe not as much.
Okay. The other numbers we have, the 6-month outlook was basically unchanged. We had 50% of the people are expecting things to be better 6 months from now. 35 say it's the same, and only 15 say it's going to be worse. And that's basically the same as we had last month, which was 51, 34, and 15. Where do you come down? And things are going to be better, about the same, or are you in the negative area?
I think in the 6 months outlook, I think things are going to be pretty good. I think it'll be fairly robust still. There are other factors. I think, we'll probably talk about this later, but like with tariffs and things like that are still working its way in. But I think in the next 6 months, things should be pretty robust.
Well, to jump the gun a little bit on tariffs, we got some of that in the commentary, but I also saw an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal from President Trump, and he's declared that the tariffs are created in the world's greatest economy. I don't know if you saw that, but
I don't know if I would comment with that. It's you gotta who you're asking, I guess. If you're asking the car manufacturers, I'm not sure they're going to agree with that. I think the cost of a new car is too expensive, frankly, for them to be able to sell in the market. I mean, what is a car made of if not steel and aluminum, right? So. Mm-hmm. So it depends on who you ask. I think certainly there's a lot of investments in technology. There's, I think all these countries are pledging to put in hundreds of billions of dollars of investment into the United States. We've definitely leveraged, I think, our economy and our consumer market to push for these investments. But it depends who you ask. Like I think for manufacturing, for cars and trucks and things like that, I don't think they're seeing the expansion that they would have expected, or maybe that they hope for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, the mention of the number that really jumped out to me this time was the ISM PMI for manufacturing. It jumped up to 52.6 versus 47.9 in December. And that's the first time that it's been above 50 in basically a year. So it's a huge jump in manufacturing. That's kind of surprised me. What's your take there?
I think it might be a January effect to the extent that, what does everyone do at the end of the year? Like it's the end of their fiscal year and nobody wants to have too much inventory. So they're drawing it down and basically we're getting ready to close the books at the end of December. January picks up and then, the orders that have been delayed, they place and they get ready for the new year. So I don't know if there's a study on this, but I generally think in January, you're going to see a higher PMI than later parts of the year. I'm curious if you looked at the last 5-year history, if there's a trend there, like in December and January, if there's a jump, but I think there's always going to be that going on with manufacturing. Nobody wants to carry a bunch of inventory at the end of the year.
Yeah. And I read something that some people are trying to get ahead of some more price increases. So
right. And that too, there's, when where the tide is going, I think people, if they have the resources to do so, they get ahead of it.
All right. So anyways, we're overall, we got pretty good numbers. And my take was that things were kind of balancing out a little bit of the emotional stuff. But then we had the PMI maybe went emotional while the FDI stable. Okay. Before we move on to the commentary, anything else you want to add on the raw numbers?
No, I think, again, I think we're generally in a good spot. If you take a snapshot of where we are and even into, the first couple of quarters, I think we'll be good. I do wonder how the later part of this year is going to look because, last year, it was all tariffs, right? Like it was all about, the changing regulations but you generally had a sense of where the direction was and it was sort of a general lifting of the tide. This year, you still have some of that from the carryover, but I think the later part of the year is going to be where we see a lot more turbulence, where, I think strategies diverge and maybe more of this AI stuff is going to come to fruition and people are going to realize, hey, we're putting in all this money, but where's the return? It's going to take some time. I read that OpenAI and Anthropic were racing towards an IPO. And I think it's because they want to be the first, right? Because the first one's going to get the better valuation. The second one may not get anything. So, but you wonder why they're racing towards an IPO, right? Like,
before anybody figures out what we're doing.
Yeah, right. So, you got to wonder why people are racing to liquidate their business or sell shares of the business. So, so I think that's the later part of the year will be interesting. But I think that for the first 6 months, I think we're pretty much on the same track.
Well, so we got off to a good start. All right, let's jump into the commentary. And Beard says that the commentary mostly pointed to steady to improving activity entering the year. January strength offset by weather disruptions and ongoing tariff uncertainty. So I'm going to go through these comments like we usually do, and then you can jump in and weigh in on them as you see fit. So the first one is we had a strong Q4 for 2025 sales, and this continued with a very strong January 2026. Next one said our distributor customers seem very confident that fastener sales in the near future will be higher for them, which offers us the expectation that fastener sales will be higher for us as well. Next one is said, we had weather here. You're in California, so you had nice weather, but the rest of most of the fastener pockets had not so nice weather. This comment says, despite the weather, activity has been hot. We would like to see bookings remain strong. And the next one said, sales growth slowed down due to the weather across the East and Midwest. Did you guys see any impacts on the weather?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, when weather hits, we, if you look at again on that day, certainly, the trucking companies aren't running, and it's hard for our employees to get into the warehouse and get into the sales office. So when weather hits, we certainly see a downturn that day. It doesn't mean that the business is gone. It's just because people can't get into the office.
Can't deliver it.
Yeah. So we usually see a pickup the next day, and then it all kind of averages out. So yeah, I mean it's generally flat, I would say. Based on weather effects, maybe even positive to an extent, because of all the repair work that has to go after the weather leaves, right? So maybe it's probably a net positive to fastener consumption.
Yeah, if you're selling shovels and winter gloves, and I know you guys have the glove line, maybe.
Yeah, no, we
those are moving.
We do well in the winter.
Do you do any rock salt?
Never say never. So we're always looking for new products, right?
Right. Because this is just an anecdote. I ran out of rock salt yesterday, and the stores are empty around here in Ohio.
Well, we almost sold tissue paper during COVID. So
okay.
It's like you can't keep it on the shelf. So we're like, maybe we should sell tissue paper. And then we volunteered someone to be we call them a product manager. So PM for TP.
All right. Well, you know where the market goes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, the next one's we're jumping into the tariff waters here. So we say customers now feeling the full effect of tariffs as the market has broadly exhausted all inventories now. We can see customers now realizing the full cost or increase of inputs. Next one, tariffs are also a huge impact on increasing prices.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there was language last year that, all these foreign governments are going to pay for the tariffs and foreign companies are going to pay for the tariffs. And, I think someone did a research study on this, and they're like, no, 98% of the tariffs are being paid by American companies and American consumers. There is maybe a little bit of, helping out, but, I think at the end of the day, the factories, they don't have 50% to give.
It's got to go on the price.
Yeah. So I do agree that inventory has been dwindling. I think how much inventory dwindles is not uniform. That's really dependent on the company and how much inventory they carry. But as a general rule, over time, more of the old inventory gets used up and more of the new inventory comes in. Tariffs are massive. They're massively disrupting, honestly. It's a huge crunch to cash flows. I mean, if you think about like 50% tariffs, that number, like, to give you some perspective, on a monthly basis, you're probably spending more in tariffs than you are to run your business. In terms of your warehouse, your employees, just your operating expenses. Like, tariffs are probably more than the operating expenses, or at least equal to your operating expenses as a company. And you have to pay that before you even get a chance to sell the product. So it's almost like a prepaid deposit, right? Like you have to pay it, and you don't get a payment plan. You pay it up front, you get your inventory, and then you try to sell your inventory. So it's massively disrupting to cash flows, I would say. And that's why, I think it's a challenge for many companies.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. And but this op-ed that I referred to earlier, the president says it's the opposite. Foreign producers, middlemen, large companies from outside of the U.S. are paying on the tariffs. So, and they're citing some Harvard Business School study. I don't know.
No.
The emperor's new clothes. So, okay, here's a good one. It says, have I mentioned the stupidity of tariffs recently? I wish SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, would get off their collected backsides and issue a ruling one way or another. Uncertainty at its worst.
Yeah. So my view on that is so SCOTUS is reviewing the IEEPA tariffs, not Section 232. So there are a lot of different buckets of tariffs, but whatever SCOTUS rules on, to my understanding, has no effect on Section 232. If they do strike it down, our assumption is that the president will just find another way to implement it most likely by expanding the scope of 232, just like he did last year.
Yep.
So the net difference is probably neutral. The refund idea, that's the interesting one. We were part of, I think when Section 301 was lobbied, I think there was some litigation around that. And I don't think we have seen a resolution to that. And that's been going on for I don't know how many years now. But I don't think a refund is likely. At the end of the day, the U.S. government is massively in debt. I think honestly, if all the economic factors that people talk about, the U.S. debt to me is the number one thing that people should be worried about.
We're not talking about it.
We're not talking about it.
Right.
We're 38 trillion in debt. We're adding 1.8 trillion every year, and our interest payments are $1 trillion. That's more than we spend on the military. And I really think in the next 3 to 5 years, we are at an inflection point as a country. If we don't get control of our debt, it's going to run away from us. And then that's going to threaten our bond markets, it doesn't really matter what the Fed does, at that point. The Fed influences the bond market and your mortgage rates. It's an influence. They don't control it. What really controls it is the market, And, the market is driven by two things, right? It's driven by supply and demand, and it's driven by risk and reward. So, if the risk of holding U.S. assets increases because of the default risk, because of how much debt we have, trust me, everything's going to get expensive. Everything. It doesn't matter what the Fed's going to do because the market won't accept a low return on the high risk. And that's something that I think we really need to wake up to. It's not, the tariffs, it's not the AI, it's really our debt and our reliance on selling more and more debt every year to pay for ourselves.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And I have a theory, all this talk about it, all this other stuff is just don't look at the debt.
Yeah.
Look what we're doing here. We got
talk about anything else but our debt,
Meanwhile, every administration, every Congress, they just spend way more than they take in.
It's both
year after year. Doesn't matter who's in there.
And it's maybe even taking us down sort of a dangerous path, because if we're not willing to cut our debt spending, and this is all administrations, on both sides of the aisle, does it lead to foreign adventurism, to basically take natural resources as a way to pay off our debt? I mean, it opens up, I think, a different set of plays and concerns because we all know it's not sustainable. So how are you going to pay for it? And I think that's what, I'm worried about, as an individual, but I think we should be worried about as a country.
Well, maybe the silver lining is I hear people say this is it, we've got all these problems, but so does most every other developed country.
Yeah.
And we're in a little bit better shape than them. So
that's true. I mean, everything is relative.
Everything falls, but we'll still be a little bit better shape than everyone else. So
yeah.
All right. The last comment is not about tariffs or AI. It says OEMs are finding a path to more sales through mergers and acquisitions, but the production lead times are being pushed further and further out.
Yep. Companies find growth with their capital, right? It's either organically growing or through acquisitions. Generally speaking, companies still have access to good capital right now. So, that's why M&A keeps on going, but I think M&A, it could either work out really well or work out really bad, and I think more than not, it doesn't work out as well as people expect. I think, there's a lot of changes, organizational changes and structural, cultural changes, And I would say 1 + 1, if it's 1 + 1 is 2, and that's what people are expecting, or hopefully people are hoping for 1 + 1 is like 2.5. I think usually M&A, like 1 + 1 equals to 1.5 or 1.8, it's, if you're at par, I think that's good, as a good result. But there's just, with M&A from our experience, it's always been really about the people and the culture. That's what's really the challenge. The inventory is the inventory, but it's really, people and culture.
Yeah, people got to work together at the end of the day.
Exactly. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. M&A is just a way to generate growth for businesses that have capital.
All right. So we're gonna jump off of the comments, and there was a supplemental question this time in the survey. It was on CBAM and on the regulatory front. And Baird reports that the responses to the CBAM supplemental question said that these were responses around the EU CBAM style regulations worldwide, and they were notably mixed. They said 1/3 of the respondents expect regulations to have a large impact, 1/3 expect a small impact, and the balance don't know. And then there was some commentary that went along with it. It's not in the report, but some of it's pretty animated or kind of funny. So I'm gonna add some of these comments, and then you can give the listeners your take on CBAM as well. But the first one, pretty tame. It says, we've identified current suppliers that are able to meet CBAM requirements, and we're tracking that information. The next one says, another pain in the butt from our friends in Europe. Next one, I hate CBAM. It's a mess. Another one, CBAM is a joke.
I generally agree with the later comments. I think what it is, it's a rule that has great intentions. Basically they're saying, if I'm a manufacturer in Europe, right, and I have to adhere to all these environmental rules of the European Union, then how do I compete against a factory from China who's maybe 80% coal, or India, or wherever else they're bringing products in, right? And I have to use this expensive energy, and everyone else doesn't. They use the cheap energy. So CBAM was a rule really to try to level the playing field for European manufacturers to say, hey, look, if you're coming from outside of Europe, not governed by these rules, then we need to add on effectively a tax or rate to balance out your costs so that, the European manufacturers don't all go away. So, that was the intention, and I think a good intention in that way. But where it really fails is in the execution of how they're putting this together. So, we operate a business in the UK, and so we see this. And when it was first rolled out, there was no reporting template. You had to come up with, every factory had their own template. And not only that, so there's no reporting template, so everything is self-reported. And then, where's the accountability? Where's the audits? How do you, the verification process, right? And so you have 10,000, let's just say 10,000 factories in China, or in whatever, 20,000 factories around the world that are sending stuff into Europe, all producing CBAM reports on their own templates and all being self-reported. How well do you think that's being done? And I think, the European entry, like CBP, I think are having just a field day trying to figure all this out. And it's not just that, but if there's no verification reporting, then how accurate is that information? If you're a big business, and you're publicly traded and you have audits and you have to be very transparent about all this, I think, they have to report exactly what's going on. But if you're a small company, mom and pop shop that can pop up here and go away and pop up somewhere else tomorrow, you really think they're going to say, give them the truth, in terms of reporting? And if your company is tied to the government, it is many times in some of these countries, is the government going to, if you're 80% coal, and you put 80% wind, and the government's yeah, you're 80% wind, who's going to prove them wrong?
Yeah, they're going to come out and check it. They're going to do audits, right?
Right. So, that's where it really falls apart, I think, is in execution. And honestly speaking, this is one of the moments where I'm thank goodness we have tariffs, because, CBAM is just another way of enforcing a tariff, but it's by individual companies. So I think just doing one tariff for the country is a much easier way of implementation, and you get the same result. Just say as a countrywide basis, you're 50% coal and 20% renewables, and 30% gas, then okay, this is your rate if that's your country, and push the country to change their environmental or their energy generation. But to do it at a company level, I think is just mind-bogglingly complex. And honestly, I having tariffs per country versus CBAM, I'd rather have tariffs per country. I think it's also just endemic of the EU in many ways. Like, I think the reason why the EU still has not really recovered and they're still struggling economically, there's really, I think, 2 or 3 main forces. One is they're not energy independent. They still rely on a lot of imported energy, and it's getting more and more expensive. And people are fighting for natural gas, for example, with all these data centers. So, I think energy costs are still very high in Europe. It's overly regulated. I think CBAM is a really good example of overregulation and stretching the powers of the government, if you will. Like, it's good intentions, but poorly executed.
Yeah, good intention, unintended consequences, over exuberance and trying to control things.
Yeah, and some things just you can't control at the government level at that detail. Yeah, and the third, it really is that I think that, I think as Americans, we look at the EU market as like, okay, they're all Europeans. But, I think Europeans don't see themselves as all similar. Like, I think, even, if you're Finnish or Swedish or Norwegian, I think they all kind of see each other as being a little different, even though we think of themselves very similar. The French and the Germans, obviously, and Italians are all very different. So the economies are not really as integrated as the U.S. So they don't really have the economic scale that we do in the U.S., even though as a bloc, they are certainly as big, if not bigger than the U.S. And so it's I think, indicative of the European regulatory environment. They come up with these rules that are just hard to implement.
Yeah, and they're hard to, put them into practice, and they just don't make any sense. I've heard people saying, well, I just pay the fine and move on or whatever. And like you were saying, just make things up.
Yeah.
We're CBAM compliant. Okay.
And that's where it's not fair. Like, if you're a big business and you have to take care of all these employees, and you have publicly reported audits and all that, like, you're fighting a different fight compared to the smaller guys.
Lots of extra paperwork. And I was at a conference that I've gone to every year, and it's about the wire harness industry that are, and 3 or 4 years ago, everything was about sustainability, carbon saving. And then this last one I went to, nobody talked about that. They were talking about innovations. And so that's the kind of thing. It's like, what are we focused on? Are we focusing on innovations to get better? Or are we focusing on drawing ourselves in and trying to conserve everything and not use anything and we'll just sit there?
I think conservation is a great idea, but I don't think we're going to conserve our way to a greener planet.
Right. You can innovate to a greener planet, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Look how far, HVAC has come over the last 3 or 4 decades.
Right. Exactly. There's, a lot of ideas out there.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We got a couple, 2 more comments here. Based on what I've seen so far, CBAM looks like it'll be a significant burden. We can't even get accurate information from our suppliers. No one is quite sure how to capture the required data. And the last one, not looking forward to any level of participation, have been dodging any business that includes CBAM requirements.
Yeah. No, I think, for our business, we do have a tab that is for products that are CBAM. Basically, the vendors have given us their CBAM certificates. So we have tried to adapt and work with it. A lot of our distributors buy products and ship them to Europe. So we do the best we can, but it is a challenge. I think the Taiwanese factories have done a better job than most because, the government in Taiwan has actually pushed factories to report their energy consumption and sources of energy as a central directive, basically telling factories you need to do this, because if you don't do this, you're going to lose access to the European market. And, so much of Taiwan's economy is export driven. So this is something that actually Taiwanese companies were a little bit ahead of than the rest of the world, but it's still, it's definitely a challenge.
I don't know what to do.
I mean, they're just basically saying, I don't know how to report the numbers correctly. So then how do you verify my numbers? Right. So,
right.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. All right. Anything else on the FDI or the comments or CBAM before we move on and let you tell the listeners what's going on at Brighton Best International?
No, I think we covered a lot already. So
good. Well, you guys just finished your 100-year celebration last year. Congratulations on that. You did a good job with all the marketing of it and celebrations in Vegas and that. What can you tell the listeners?
Yeah. I think it was a great year last year, 100 years. And in many ways, I feel like our company is stronger than ever, and to be at 100 and be able to say that, I think is we're blessed to be able to say that. We're always looking for new products. We're looking at, revamping our preferred. We've recently added a strut line. So, I mean, those are all new categories we've included now. And we're always looking. But, I think something to say about our business is that, and it's long enough to, I think, be able to say this, is that, it's really hard to be consistent at a high level and over a long time, as a business and even as individuals. I think about athletes and to perform at a high level over time consistently. It's a challenge to the body. It's a challenge to the mind. But I think, I'm proud to say that I think we've done that, year after year, like over a decade, we've been doing that. And, really if I can just give a shout out to our internal team, like our warehouse, our inside team, we're shipping tens of thousands of different boxes, every single day to all over the country next day and doing it in a, smooth and well-oiled way. And, we take it for granted because it happens every day, but I'll tell you, it's not easy to do every day. And, I think because we do, I'm really proud of our team and, to be able to do that. And it certainly makes, our jobs easier when we're, presenting ourselves to the market and talking about other future opportunities, it's certainly easier. It's an easier conversation when you're able to say, look at our service levels for what we've already done. So yeah, I mean, I think if I can just, give a shout out to our teammates and, they've done a great job in keeping this business running for years and decades.
Well, and you guys have a lot of locations too, and a lot of people on that team. And
right,
I can say when I come across Brighton Best people, they always seem to have a good positive attitude. You guys are adding products, you're innovating, you're looking forward, you're working hard. So it's a good example for the industry.
Thank you, I appreciate that. It's nice when people see that, and and sometimes it's good to be reminded of that too. It's just when you're in it every day, and you're, heads down and you're just working. Sometimes you don't stick your head up and say, "Hey, look, like we're okay.
Shining.
We're doing okay." There's always room for improvement. There's always things we can do better. But overall, we're doing okay. Yeah. So I appreciate you saying that, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. Good. You're welcome. And now we got lots of shows coming up, and I think you're speaking on a panel coming up.
Yeah, it's the Pac West conference. So they always have a what's next, what's new, and we usually have this recording before that. So I'll probably be talking about very much the same things, and it's a nice warm up to that panel. But it's a good panel. There's three of us. There's a stainless portion, a carbon portion, and a domestic manufacturing portion. So it gives a pretty well-rounded view of what's going on in the market. So it's always a good one. So I would encourage people to be a part of that, join the Pac West, and it's a good session. And then I think the next day, the economist is going to come out and talk about what he sees, and I'm very curious about that too, because he obviously sees a much broader picture than we do just in fasteners.
Yeah, we've got a multi-page article in the February-March issue of Fastener Technology with a preview article on that. Jamie Adams wrote that, so they can check it out. Yeah, let's see. We've got. Look at the dates here. March 11th to the 13th, 2026 in Anaheim, California. So it looks like a pretty good lineup of educational content and networking and exhibitors and speakers, including yourself, and a couple other good sessions. So.
It's a good industry driven event. So yeah, I would encourage people to.
And good weather too, probably.
you can't beat Anaheim. I think we were talking earlier. It was 91 degrees yesterday for me, as the rest of the country was still probably frozen. So
yeah, we had 5 degrees.
Yeah, I hope that was Celsius now.
Yeah, it was all right. I went for a walk in the 5 degrees.
Okay.
I was bundled up.
Yeah, well, enjoy it too, but we don't have much to complain about in California with weather. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, one other thing I wanted to ask you about, a couple years ago, we were talking about, you had mentioned an RV place that you drive by, and you were looking at how many RVs were there. And I have one close to me too. And every time I drive by it, I think about that conversation. So what's the RV index look like right now in California?
It's going down. So there's a few more new spaces. I think, well, I mean, it has been probably 5 years since everyone stockpiled, and
Right, because people couldn't go anywhere except on the road.
yeah. I mean, I think people were thinking about working remote from Yosemite or something, so like, so it's, I think things are normalizing a little bit. What are you saying? I'm curious.
The place I go, they're always filled. They're always full of RVs. I don't really know. I think that might just be his strategy. I'm assuming it's a guy that runs it, that it's his strategy to have stuff in stock, but he's got a lot of RVs.
Still got a lot of RVs, yeah.
He's got a lot of RVs, but some cool looking ones. So.
Yeah, so newer ones. So if he's got newer ones, that means he's turning his older ones.
Wow. Yeah, he's turning around. He's got them on display and still in business. So
okay, well, that's a good thing. There's a lot of places for us to go in California with an RV, so maybe that's why we're doing a little bit better out here.
And then people want to get out of Ohio in the winter. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, it's good to have you on again. Thanks for your insight, and always a pleasure to hear what you have to say and hear about Brighton Best International.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for joining us. That was Brighton Best International President Jun Xu. The FDI number for January 2026 was 52 versus 56.4 in December of 2025. Visit FDIsurvey.com to participate in the process and get a detailed PDF copy of Baird's monthly analysis. Now for today's top story. Simpson Strong-Tie, a leader in engineered structural connectors and building solutions, celebrated the grand opening of its new manufacturing site in Gallatin, Tennessee, with a ribbon-cutting celebration and plant tours on January 15, 2026. The 500,000 square foot, $125 million facility will be used to test and manufacture a range of anchors, fasteners, and quick-dry fastening tools. The new building opened with 227 employees on staff, including machine operators, maintenance technicians, heat treatment techs, and process and product engineers. Another 20 jobs are expected to be added this year. Mike McNulty, Simpson Strong-Tie CEO, said, quote, "This manufacturing and training facility is unlike any other in the construction industry, featuring end-to-end fastening production under one roof with the latest equipment and technology. We're proud to expand our presence in Tennessee, a state with a growing, vibrant population, a skilled workforce, and a supportive business environment," end quote. The grand opening celebration gathered Simpson Strong-Tie leaders, partners, and customers, as well as local politicians, including Gallatin Mayor Paige Brown, who said, quote, "Simpson Strong-Tie has a tremendous history in Gallatin. For more than 60 years, they provided good jobs for our citizens and produced products that power construction around the world. Our city is most fortunate that Simpson Strong-Tie worked hard to locate its new expanded facility in Gallatin. We are grateful for their investment here and the outstanding culture they represent," end quote. You can see a picture of the new Simpson facility on page 1 of the February 16, 2026 issue of the Fastener News Report, available online at fastenertech.com. Next up, today's Fastener Newsmaker headlines. In corporate news, the Würth Group reported record sales in 2025. S.W. Anderson acquired aerospace computer supplies. Bolton entered a binding agreement for full ownership of its operations in India. Lilly Fasteners acquired Coburn Myers. Prime Industrial Fasteners was selected for a feature on the Bloomberg Network series The World's Greatest. Nefco formed a strategic partnership with Leonard Green & Partners LP. Whitecap acquired Colony Hardware. Edson Manufacturing invested $4 million to expand into a 38,000 square foot facility. Rotor Clip released a new video of its Czech Republic manufacturing facility. American Ring is celebrating 50 years of operation, and Optimus International is being acquired by Exponent, a European private equity firm, while Optimus Solutions remains under the ownership of American Industrial Partners. In personnel news, Suncor Stainless promoted Alicia Basowicz to Senior Regional Account Manager Southeast. Apex Stainless Fasteners appointed Gareth Whiteford as its Commercial Director. Zach Williams of Würth Industry USA was elected to the 2026 President of the Young Fastener Professionals. Century Fasteners promoted James D. Harding to Managing Director, Robert D. Botticelli to Director of Sales, and Denise Murphy-Lency to General Manager of Northeast Sales. Semblex welcomed Karam Ipik-Bayrek as Strategic Business Development Manager. Decker Manufacturing appointed Mark Conkle, President and CEO. And Women in the Fastener Industry, also known as Wi-Fi, named Darlene Collis of LinFast Solutions Group as the Wi-Fi Woman of the Year, and Ruth Dowling Kaufman of All Integrated Solutions as Wi-Fi Women in Business, while giving Jeff Adams of Wing Hamlin Company the Wi-Fi Man-Up Award for 2025. You can get details on all of these stories and more in Fastener Technology International Magazine and the Fastener News Report monthly newsletter, both available online at fastenertech.com. Now let's turn to the back page to talk about the changing world order. Last month, I attended a talk on reshoring and government policy by Harry Mosier, and one of the many good slides in his presentation caught my attention. It was from a book called Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. The 2021 book analyzes the cyclical patterns of empires over the last 500 years, focusing on the rise and fall of world powers. The chart that got my attention was titled Changing World Order, and it presented a cyclical model showing how major powers rise to global prominence, reach a peak, and eventually decline. It was a bell-shaped arc that showed the sequence of strengths that build a new order, followed by vulnerabilities that lead to stagnation, and finally breakdown. According to the chart, there are 8 characteristics of a nation on the rise, including strong leadership, inventiveness, good education, strong culture, good resource allocation, good competitiveness, strong income growth, and strong markets and financial centers. When a country reaches the top or zenith, 4 less desirable tendencies begin to appear, and they are lower productivity, being overextended, loss of competitiveness, and appearance of wealth gaps. And the final points, which show an empire, nation, or country clearly on the decline, are large debts, printing of money, internal conflict, loss of reserve currency, weak leadership, and civil war or revolution. Dalio says that these dynamics collectively mark the transition from a mature order to decline, eventually giving the way to the emergence of new rising powers and restarting of the cycle. So the 2 questions that came to my mind were, number 1, where are we on this cycle? And number 2, can a country at the top or in decline restart the cycle on its own without experiencing massive failures? This has been Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International bringing you the Fastener News Report. Please send your news, pictures, comments, corrections, or complaints to me at mcnulty@fastenertech.com.
When precision matters, Gobel delivers. Our distributors and authorized dealers partner with us because they're done dealing with the usual headaches. Long lead times, unpredictable back orders, and inconsistent quality from low-cost providers. At Gobel, we don't play those games. We keep consistent stock, we ensure dependable delivery, and we back every order with real technical support that keeps your projects moving on schedule. Because when precision matters, Gobel delivers.
If you're a fastener distributor, please listen up. Hey, this is Steve Roebuck, mining specialist with J. Lanfranco Lock Nuts. Discover the incredible durability of J. Lanfranco Lock Nuts for yourself. The perfect choice for the mining industry where only the toughest components can withstand the rigors of heavy machinery and harsh conditions. Designed with precision, these lock nuts ensure maximum safety and reliability, preventing loosening and costly downtimes. Your clients deserve the best fasteners, so send an email to mining@jlanfranco.com to learn more.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Carmen Vertullo with your Fastener Training Minute, coming to you from the Fastener Training Institute and Carver Labs in beautiful, beautiful El Cajon, California on this end of January day. It's stunning here. I know the rest of the country is locked down in snow and cold. I think we're the only place in the country that has decent weather right now. Sorry to share that with you. Anyway, today's Fastener Training Minute comes from the result of a recent lab test that we did on a very nice grade 8 double-ended stud, 1 inch by about 10 inches long. I don't know exactly the application. It looks like based on what was on the drawing, it's in the transportation industry, possibly in a rail, light rail, heavy rail application. So a critical application most likely. And based on the testing that was required on it, I would presume so. And also the drawing had some interesting things on it that you wouldn't normally see on a run-of-the-mill stud. Well, anyway, this part did not pass the requirements. And the question becomes, what can we do now? One of the things that the client said was, well, we're going to have these remade. And oh, by the way, can we test them before we plate them? And there's an obvious reason for that, because these parts came to us already plated. So when we return, I'm going to process all the options the customer would have for dealing with this non-conformance, including possibly recovering the parts.
You hear that? Your line is speaking to you. It's asking you a question. Are we good enough? Is good enough good enough? Are we delivering the best possible solution? Will what we make stand the test of time? Can we be bigger, faster, safer, smarter? Can we get what we need before we need it? Can we increase production? Can we be more precise? Can we work day and night for weeks on end? Can we create what's never been done? Yes, we can. Let's discover your worth.
Precision, efficiency, durability. J.L. Franco has been a trusted name for the finest lock nuts worldwide and across North America for over 40 years. J.L. Franco keeps projects on track, on time, and on budget, providing self-locking lock nuts and critical bolting components for applications in aerospace, mining, industrial, and many other sectors where reliability and high performance are essential. Learn more about J.L. Franco online at www.jlanfranco.com. And don't miss our booth at Fastener Fair USA. J.L. Franco, lock nuts for critical bolted joints.
Solution Man, Ken.
Solution Man, you're my fastener hero.
Just doing my job, ma'am.
SOLUTION, Solution Industry. We are Solution.
Well, welcome back, everyone. This is Carmen Vertullo with the Fastener Training Minute. Today, talking about a non-conformance we had with a 1 inch by about 10 inch long grade 8 double-ended stud. First off, it was a very nice looking part. The drawing had some interesting things on it regarding the thread run out. That's where the thread stops up against the non-threaded portion. They had some very specific reasons for that being controlled, and also the requirement for rolled threads. And that would tend to make us think this part is used in a important, if not critical, application, which is fine. Unfortunately, when we tested this part, we did a machined specimen tensile test because they wanted to know things like yield, elongation, and reduction of area. And interestingly enough, this part had minimums and maximums for the tensile strength and the yield strength, as well as a standard grade 8 hardness range. Normally in the grade 8 from SAEJ 429, we do not have a maximum strength requirement, only a minimum. We do see maximum strength requirements on some other products, such as the ASTM F3125 grade A490, which is pretty much exactly like a grade 8, except it's a structural product. So that's what we know. Unfortunately, this part was high on strength, tensile strength and yield strength were both about 10% high, and the hardness was out of range, the maximum of HRC 39, and these were 41. So there's a couple of implications there. One is it's a very good thing that the client chose to do some third-party testing on this product because, as you know, at above HRC 39, we have hydrogen embrittlement susceptibility issues for plated parts. So got to get that out of the way. And the client said, okay, we're going to have these remade. Can we test them before they're plated? And that's a very good idea because why invest in plating on a product or any other kind of secondary processing, inspection, packaging, whatever that adds value without knowing the part is good? So that's a good strategy. Some applications, some aerospace applications in particular, do require that the finished part be mechanically tested. That has already been plated. And when that occurs, you have to do it, but it doesn't preclude you from testing it prior to plating. And that can be a simple test right in your lab without even having any documentation if you don't want it, because it's not required for the finished part. But it's a good idea to control your risk, to be able to know that the part is, in fact, properly heat treated before you invest in the plating. Well, the interesting thing is with this part, there are some options. Because the part is high on hardness and high on tensile strength, it would be a relatively simple matter to take that part, strip off the plating, and do a process called tempering back. That means we would retemper the part and make it a little bit softer than it was before. To do that, it would be a good idea to know what the tempering temperature on the original tempering was, and then we would just go a little bit higher than that. And if, in fact, it turned out that this part was non-conforming because the strength was a low or the hardness was low, then we would have no choice except to completely reheat treat it, as that would be go through the whole quench and temper process. Now, a question arises, what about this retempering? Is that going to affect the quality of the part? Is it risky? Is it going to make it a less quality part? In fact, double tempering can oftentimes lead to a better quality part, a more fatigue-resistant part, a part that's capable of better receiving impact and shock situations. And oftentimes we see that in tooling, in high-strength tooling. We'll do a double temper or even a triple temper. And what that does is it gives us a little better fine-grained tempered martensite, more uniform tempered martensite in the final version of the part. And we can look at that. We can take a look at the part and mount it and polish it and see what are we starting with, and then do it again and see what are we getting after we do that next tempering. Those are all things that can add to the reliability or reduce the risk. So the decision to do this or not do it would be based primarily on time. Is the part a long lead time? Is it maybe even irreplaceable? How many of them are there? Do we only have 10 of these things or 10,000? What's the value of the lot? And I think most importantly, how reliably can we pull this off? Well, one way that we can know we can reliably pull it off is we can try it on just one or two of the specimens. And actually, we could try it on the remaining piece of the specimen that we tested, because we have heat treatment capability on a small scale here at Carver Labs. So we could figure that out for the client and say, okay, here's what you do. Temper it back this temperature, strip it, temper it, test it, replate it, and you're good. So that's an interesting story about how to recover product that is non-conforming. There are other issues sometimes that we run up against, such as hydrogen embrittlement, or things where the part was not heat treated properly and it falls outside the conforming range, where we can recondition the part and bring it back into conformance. No problem doing that. It's maybe not a common thing that's done in manufacturing, but I'm certain that any particular manufacturer who would produce a lot of product and at the end of the heat treatment process found it to be non-conforming would not hesitate to do some kind of a reheat treatment process to bring that product into conformance. Well, I hope you learned something about heat treating and recovering product that is not in conformance. This has been Carmen Vertullo with your Fastener Training Minute. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Rob, Big Country Reynolds of NSQL Software, coming to you from the 19th hole, and you are listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
And it's feature segment time. Charlie Kerr fans will be glad to know that we've got him on the line with us right now, and we're way overdue, Charlie. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You know, I always like to get in on these podcasts.
Well, this time you're actually going above and beyond because we're interrupting your vacation. You're on the ski slopes, as I understand it, or at least you're next to them.
Well, I left my skis at home this year.
Really?
Yeah. Here's the short version of the story. In June of 2025, while pedaling my bicycle, I got T-boned by a pickup truck.
Oh, God.
I wasn't seriously injured, but I did have a sore back that's just now to the point where unless I make an odd movement like I would make if I did a belly slam in the snow, I don't know that my back has been injured. But anyhow, so this guy hits me, and I told him, I said, you know, there was nothing wrong with the bike. You know, I wasn't visibly injured. But I said, if I wake up tomorrow with some problems, I got to know how to find you. So we got to make a police report. So he called the cops came, and he's a younger guy. I'm guessing I've met him before because this happened right by my office. And I know all the cops that patrol because we've had false alarms. I've had to go out and explain to them that, you know, I own the company. I'm not a burglar. But anyhow.
Wait, but this guy hit you before?
No, the guy in the pickup truck was a younger guy, and he called the police to come make a police report. So the cop comes, he says, you sure you don't want me to call the EMTs to come check you out? And I said, no, you know, I think I'm okay. You know, and if I, you know, was laying in the street and couldn't get up, that'd have been a different story. So he kept kind of pressing. I said, listen, if the EMTs come and check me out, they're going to take me to the hospital. And between my insurance and the guy that hit me insurance, I'm going to be admitted. And they're going to do x-rays, CAT scans, you name it. Then, because the hospital that I would have gone to is part of the Cleveland Clinic network, which is where my physician is, they're going to notice that I'm overdue for a tetanus shot, that I'm overdue for a flu shot, I'm behind on my COVID vaccination booster, and I'm overdue for my colonoscopy.
Oh.
And I looked at the guy that hit me. Now, keep in mind, these are young guys. I don't think they've ever had this done to them. I said, if I end up getting a colonoscopy because of you, I will hire a lawyer. And, you know, this cop is looking at me like, wow, it's that bad. I said, it's the prep. You got to drink the stuff that I call Drano.
Yeah.
I said, that's the hard part. But anyhow, I got on the bike the next day. You know, I decided, even though I had a sore back, I wasn't going to, you know, succumb to this event. And, you know, my back is fine now. But I told the guys, there's my son's here and a couple buddies of mine. I said, I'm going to go with you to Tahoe because it's a cool place. I like hanging out. I just really think it's a good idea that I don't ski because I'm not that good a skier. And if I fall, which I'm going to, and I fall the right way, I got 6 more months of a sore back. So that's why I didn't bring the skis on this trip.
Okay, I can understand that, but that's a pity because there's some great skiing out in the fields of Tahoe.
Let me clue you in on something. I live in Cleveland. It's like near zero or sub-zero temperatures there now with like 4 feet of snow in the yard. When I'm done with you guys, I'm going to go sit out on the deck. There's a grill out there and like a picnic table. The sun makes it feel like it's in the 60s. It is very warm here right now.
You're going to have some good scenery today, I'm guessing, Charlie.
Well, no, I flew into Reno, and on Sunday, I sat out, you know, they had little chairs at the hotel, and I was sitting in the sun. I had no jacket. I was in my shirt. I had a cold can of PBR in one hand and my phone in the other to make sure I didn't miss your messages in case you were trying to get a hold of me. And I thought, this is weird. I'm on a winter vacation, and it's warmer here than it is in Fort Myers, Florida.
I know.
Where one of the guys that's sharing the condo, he He flew out of the Fort Myers airport. They don't have de-icing equipment down there. And his flight got delayed for an hour because there was ice on the wings because it got that cold down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much for climate change. I got a lot to say about that in a couple of minutes. Okay. So what else can I tell you?
I knew there was going to be a connection there. Yeah, we'll swerve into that. We started the episode out with it. Why not continue it here as long as we got you on the line, Charlie? Yeah, man. I mentioned the scenery. I think don't the snow bunnies, or sorry, do they still say that? The ladies who ski, don't they take advantage of all the warm weather when they ski in these kinds of conditions?
I'll find out later on. There's a place, Brian probably knows what I'm talking about. It's called High Camp. There's a fairly large bar up there. It's on the mount. Even though I'm not skiing, I think I can buy a discounted lift ticket.
Yes, you can.
So I'll be partying up there before the week is over with.
Have you skied over there, Brian? Did you?
Yeah, I did. I've skied Tahoe twice, and had a lot of fun. And you can seriously do damage to yourself because the casinos are open all night. And
what's the base there this year? Did they get a good year?
No, in fact, when I was here 2 years ago, this is almost like you think I'm making this story up. One night it snowed so hard, we had to wait for the snow removal equipment to clear the street before we could leave the condo to go to the mountain to go skiing.
I've never had it that way. Okay.
Oh, they had a record amount of snow. And, keep in mind, to be, sounding repetitive, I'm not that good a skier. Fresh powder, if it's not real deep, is easy and fun to ski in. When the snow is brand new and it's 2 to 3 feet deep, and you're not that good a skier and you can't see where the tips of your skis are at, that's a crash waiting to happen.
Yeah, it's a little harder. That is true.
Yeah. But anyhow, it's warm here, but I'm going to have fun. And I think starting my vacation with you guys is probably just the ticket.
Oh, cool. Good. Well, I hope you have a lot of fun.
Anyhow, since we're on kind of a weather-related discussion, one of the things that I mentioned to Eric that I wanted to touch on with your concurrence, ISO standard 9001 2015 is about to be revised to 2026. And I've done a little bit of research on this because Kerr Lakeside is an ISO 9001 registered company, as well as having our ISO 17025 that covers our lab accreditation. Now, I don't see where that standard's in the process of being revised.
I think I can hear you flipping paperwork. Is that what you're doing? You're on vacation, aren't you?
No, but I got notes. I told you I was going to be prepared to sound intelligent.
All right, you are amazing, Charlie Kerr.
But anyhow, one of the things that is going to be incorporated in the new version of ISO 9001 is sustainability and climate change. Now, we got an ISO audit conducted on us a couple months ago, and we got busted. That's my terminology. This would have been probably 6 months ago. We got written up for a non-conformance related to, there's a section in the standard that says that you have to understand the needs and expectations of interested parties. Now, when we first started getting ready to go with 2015, the interested parties was a new element of the standard. So as part of our management review process, we identified some of the obvious ones: customers, suppliers, employees, and then there were a few other, believe it or not, like the mayor of the city where our factory is located, because I'm in regular communication with, local government, just in case I need a favor, they know who I am when I ask for it.
Hey, Charlie.
Yeah.
Let me point out that for listeners who are not aware, I don't know if there would be many in this audience, but Charlie, who's speaking now, is the chairman of Kerr Lakeside, based in Euclid, Ohio. Very well-known cold header and venerated, I might add. So that gives a little background of what you're talking about now in terms of your ISO audit.
Yeah, well, I've been involved in our company's quality management systems going back to the mid-1980s when this thing called HR 3000 was becoming Public Law 101592, and we got our lab accredited. But anyhow, back to this non-conformance. This goes back to like September of 25. He wrote us up because we have lack of documentation for climate change. Now, I'm on a ski trip. Now, if I manufactured skis and snowboards and there was no snow on the mountain close to my shop, I'd be concerned about climate change. I make screws. It is beyond me to figure out how this auditor thought that the quality of my product, the quality of the service we supply or provide, and just the overall experience of doing business with Kerr Lakeside would be diminished because I'm not concerned about whether or not it's going to snow in January or be 95 degrees in July. Now, what I think is happening here, ISO is an international organization. And by coincidence, on Tuesday, February 3rd, this was in the Wall Street Journal. I'm quoting from this newspaper. International organizations are run by a bureaucratic class with a relatively common worldview. Many have leftist agendas or agendas largely aligned with European left-wing political values. Okay, now, back to another topic that you and I had discussed in show prep, CBAM. I think that's a left-wing political value connected to Europe. We'll get into that later. But where I think ISO is running the risk of losing credibility is they're starting to use their, third-party, accreditation or recognition is a method of coercion to get people to affirm a contested concept that's got a set of facts that are not universally accepted. Now, I personally think climate change is real. 20,000 years ago, Cleveland, Ohio, if it was there then, was under a mile of ice.
Yeah.
This is 20,000 years ago. There's only one way that could happen. It got real cold, and it stayed real cold for a real long time. Well, all of a sudden it warmed up and the glaciers started to melt. Could you imagine if all those busybodies that are running around today saying, the planet's warming up, it's going to be the end of life as we know it, were around 20,000 years ago? There'd still be glaciers covering all of Canada and half of the United States.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't say there would be, but they would try to, save the glaciers. So, but anyhow, and I'm going to change the subject a little bit.
Well, hang on. Before you change the subject.
No, I'm not changing the subject. Okay, but go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know that we want to get into a complete climate change controversy discussion yet again, No,
we're not.
But it's a valid point, of course, and we've inadvertently steered into it by events that are affecting our business. And as you know, we started the podcast today with a conversation about CBAM simply because of what's going on in the EU right now. And what we know for a fact is that things change over time. And so the idea that all this is politicized now is really too bad, but it is. That's why people get very uncomfortable when it gets raised. But here we are, I'm comfortable with it. I just want to point all that out.
Well, no, I get that. See, one of the things, and go back to ISO has a, useful purpose to serve, but trying to pursue political agendas by risking, like, for instance, let's say we had our ISO 9001 and our ISO 17025 yanked from us because I refuse to affirm a belief in climate change is man-made. I don't believe that. I don't think my business should be put at risk because of an opinion that I hold based on information that I collect. Now, one thing I want to point out here, because ISO butts into other stuff that is, and here's what I'm talking about. In 2022, ISO came up with this thing called the Merchant Category Code, MCC. Now, when you get your credit card statement, depending on who your credit card is with, it'll break things out like lodging, dining, gas for your car, toys that you bought, for Christmas presents. All those different vendors have a merchant category code. And there's a purpose for that. It makes it easier for you, the customer, to, organize your credit card purchases. Well, in 2022, ISO came up with a brand new merchant category code, and it was for retailers that sold guns and ammunition. There is only one reason for them to do that. They wanted to make it easy for governments to track people who buy ammo and guns. And they were going to use this credit card merchant category code as the mechanism to do it. Now, the cell phone companies have recently been busted for sharing data with the Department of Justice during the Biden administration for like senators, some other ranking government officials that weren't going along with some of the things the Biden administration was doing. I guarantee you Chase Bank, Bank of America, who's Wells Fargo, some of the larger banks that handle credit card transactions, I'd be willing to bet they'd be more than happy to turn that information over to the government without a warrant. And the reason for that is the key question is this. You made the purchase, but that information is not yours. It's the credit card companies. ISO involved themselves deliberately in trying to stigmatize purchasing or owning firearms and the ammunition that goes with it. I got a problem with that. And I know there's people listening to this podcast that probably take a dim view of people that walk around with loaded guns on them. I get that. But it's not ISO's place to play politics with standards that they release. And they're doing it now with the new version of ISO 9001 by inserting that you have to consider climate change and how it's going to affect your business in order to maintain your certification.
Well, that's sort of interesting. Yeah.
Well, back to this merchant code thing. I'm not going to name names because I don't believe in name dropping without getting people's permission to do it. I was at a Precision Machine Products Association annual conference, and I was having dinner by coincidence with a machine tool. They weren't the builder. They were the distributor for a machine tool company that specializes in making machines in the firearms industry, milling machines and things like that. And on the other side of me was a guy that was one of their customers, and he makes firearm components. He doesn't make the whole gun, but he makes slides and bolts and, receivers and stuff like that. Neither one of them knew about this. That's how sneaky this implementation was.
No, it's the same with CBAM. People, by and large, are still figuring out what it is. It comes in under the radar.
Well, back to my own non-conformance with this ISO thing, we pushed back and said, wait a second. Nowhere in the current standard, this auditor it was the first time he'd been to our company. He probably knew this was in the pipeline. Now, if he would have said this is in the pipeline, and I'm telling you that they identify opportunities for improvement. If he would have said this is an opportunity for improvement, even if you do a, top to bottom, checklist, and you come up with this is not something we need to be overly concerned with. If you can document that you at least studied the issue, you probably will comply. But he didn't call it an opportunity for improvement. He wrote us up as a non-conformance. Well, we pushed back, and I think his supervisor agreed with us, and they dropped it. It was annoying. ISO should not be butting into this stuff.
Yeah, well, you said you don't like to drop names. I won't either, but I was just talking with somebody on the CBAM topic, and there's somebody that everybody would know and a heavyweight and really, really tied up with the whole ISO certification process. And he told me if he gets some of that crap raining down on him, he has a mind to start his own certification process, to compete. Now, I don't know how serious that is, but that's how pissed off he is.
Well, I'll tell you what, ISO, ASTM, ASME, for the benefit of your listeners, ASTM, American Society for Testing of Materials, ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers. They are what's called consensus standards publishing bodies. Consensus is a fancy way of saying you adhering to this is voluntary. You know, for instance, we make our screws to ASTM A574 and ASME B18.3. We choose to do that. Now, the FQA kind of sort of mandates that you got to make them to something, but it doesn't mandate that we make them to those standards. It's voluntary. If some of these standards organizations are going to use coercion for things that got nothing to do, whether it's a product spec, a system spec, you know, quality management system, and they're going to like use it as a Christmas tree to hang things on it that don't really belong there because it got, you know, when you cut a Christmas tree off at the ground, there's no ornaments or lights on it. And I kind of like them like that. You know, you get a little, you know, start tinseling them up and ornaments and lights. If you overdo it, it takes away from the general beauty of the tree. I see some of these standards issuing bodies starting to hang ornaments on their standards that got nothing to do with the original intent of what the standard was about. Now, back to CBAM for a second. We don't sell anything to Europe. We don't export. So I'm personally not too concerned about it, with one exception. And this is something I think everybody that sells to distributors, whether you're an importer or a domestic manufacturer like I am, you sell to a distributor. You frequently do not know who the end user of the product is or what they're doing with it. A couple minutes ago, we were talking about my bicycle accidents. I have a couple of bikes. One of them's a Trek. I like the Trek because it's put together with a lot of socket head cap screws. I don't know if they're mine. The one that holds, okay.
Thanks for keeping it fastener related, Charlie.
But the socket head cap screw that holds my seat to the stem is a Kerr Lakeside screw.
Nice.
The one that came with the bike, I think, was a great too. It had a fatigue failure while I was riding it.
Oh, God.
So I put a class 12.9. It's like an M8 by 50 in there. Haven't any problems since then. But where I'm going with this is if you sell screws to somebody who resells them to somebody who is assembling something that gets sent to Europe, you could, without knowing about it, see your business be interfered with because of CBAM. That makes sense?
Oh, 100%. I think a lot of people are really spooked out by that. And the other side of that coin also, and we were asking a lot of people about this on the FDI, is how do you feel about the supply chain transparency that it invites? I mean, it just doesn't invite it, it mandates it, really.
Well, see, one of the things, and keep in mind, a lot of this is just stuff I've thought of. There's two ways to make steel. One is what's called BOF, basic oxygen furnace. It's a technical term for a blast furnace that you feed iron ore into and coal, limestone. You're basically making virgin steel. The second way to make steel is called electric arc furnace. Now, the BOF furnace, for those that are in the cold heading business, not too much cold heading quality steels make BOF anymore. Now, if you're a stamper, you're using sheet and plate, a lot of that is BOF. And Cleveland Cliffs makes a lot of it. So I'll come back to that in a second. It's very carbon intensive. In terms of adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, BOF is more polluting than electric furnace steel. Now, Nucor and Charter, which are big players in the cold heading market, and Liberty, they all run electric arc furnaces. So even though the carbon emissions from one mill to the next might be a little different, for all practical purposes, it's the same. But if you had steel come into your building, like back in ancient times, Inland had mills up in the Gary, Indiana area. They had both blast furnaces and electric arc furnaces in the same facility. And sometimes you'd order steel, we would. Sometimes it was BOF, sometimes it was electric arc. Well, if this transparency in the supply chain is really got some teeth in it, it's going to be impossible to know exactly what your carbon footprint is, because not only is the blast furnace emitting more carbon, it doesn't use as much electricity as the electric arc furnace. And if the electric arc furnace has a coal-fired electric plant next to it, its carbon footprint from start to finish might be larger than the other guy. And I know how to make screws. I'm not going to screw around trying to figure out when a coil of steel comes into my building, how much carbon got put into the atmosphere by the people that made it for me.
Right. And that's why everybody's expecting that they're just going to take the default values.
Well, it's the easy way to go. Now, let's hypothetically say every screw that I made went to Europe, I'd be waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning wondering about this, and in a negative way. Now,
right.
No, seriously, there are some people, but like I said, I don't think your machine was recording when we were just batting some ideas around. If screws made in China, Taiwan, Turkey, and maybe South Korea have a higher default assessment applied to them than screws made in Canada or the United States, even though there's going to be a CBAM, tariff is not the right word. It's a duty of some sort because this is all calculated as it comes in through customs. Product that today is not competitive in the European market could be competitive with stuff made in Turkey, Taiwan, China, and maybe South Korea. I'm not saying it will, but I could see where it could happen because the defaults assigned to those threaded fasteners are going to be higher because those countries have much, much looser carbon emission restrictions than in North America.
Interesting thought. Yeah.
One of the things that I've read this, I told you I was going to, do some research to sound intelligent. This carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is known by the acronym CBAM, it's, designed, there's this term called carbon leakage. And the EU has had much more stringent, I use the word air pollution controls than, developing countries like China and Taiwan. But this, in effect, is a protectionist method. It's like, okay, you don't play by the same rules we do, so we're going to put a fee on stuff you make because our companies, like, Grati's based in Italy. They're a cold editor. They have to deal with environmental considerations in Italy that factories in China and Taiwan don't have to consider or, contend with. Therefore, Grati has costs that they have to reflect in their selling price that the Chinese and Taiwanese fasteners don't. Well, all of a sudden, that cost advantage might disappear. I personally don't have a problem with that. But if that's the sole purpose of this, but I think they're saying that's the purpose, and they're just trying to close their market to stuff that's not made in their market, kind of like Donald Trump would do. Except they're trying not to look like Donald Trump because Trump comes right out and says, I'm going to charge you more money to do business in my country because I feel like it. Where they're over in Europe saying, we're going to charge you more money because we love the environment.
Right. What's the common denominator? They're all racketeers. So,
well, it's virtue signaling.
Well, it's more than that, though, because they're projecting power and they're taking payoffs and all that.
No, there's always going to be corruption.
Well, this is beyond corruption. I mean, what has got a lot of people angry about this is that it's based on such a huge lie to begin with. So, well, I didn't want to necessarily spend the whole time that we have with you, the precious few minutes before you get out there onto the veranda to observe what's going on all around you out there, Charlie. But I do appreciate your insights into all that. And you're also a guy who speaks his mind, which we also really, really value. But, I wanted to ask you, getting back to your whole bicycle collision thing, you just said you were T-boned. And I mean, obviously you're okay, which thank God for that. But how did that even happen? I mean, set this all up for us because you just kind of threw it out there and okay. I didn't hear anything about this. Usually you let me know when stuff like this happens, but this was July, you said?
It was right before July 4th. I keep my bicycles at my office and I ride, depending on what the weather is, sometime between 10 and 2. And I'll go out for like 20 minutes to half an hour, come in, answer emails, go back out for another 20 minutes to half an hour, and I try to ride 10 or 15 miles a day. I rode 2,200 miles this past summer.
Well, good job.
So I'm coming up the street. I'm like 4 or 5 businesses away from my office. And this pickup truck is coming out of a driveway. And I could tell he was not going to stop. So I did. Now, the aprons to the businesses, the one I stopped is contiguous to the apron to the one he was coming out of. Well, he didn't see me, and he made a hard left-hand turn. Then at the last second saw me hit the brakes, but still nailed me. Yeah, he wasn't going that fast, but, I thought this might be it, But
yeah,
he did see me, I'm going to say 15 feet before he hit me. But he pushed me away from the curb into the middle of the street. So he still had a little bit of steam behind him. But believe it or not, there was no damage to my bike. There was no damage to his truck. I had a sore back.
Wow.
But, that's, I'm lucky.
So the next day or two after this happened, did you feel a lot more sore? I mean, did it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But I got on the bike. And the weird thing is, because my Schwinn's a racing bike that you kind of lean over the handlebars, when I would stretch to lean over the handlebars, the back actually felt better. So I would ride longer. It was mounting and dismounting the bike where it got a little tricky because I wasn't taking, Advil or Motrin or any of that stuff. I was just toughing it out. But first thing in the morning, I had to walk around for a couple of minutes to, like the Tin Man in the Wizard of Oz. Well, no, seriously, once I got moving, I was okay. One thing I do want to cover, and I know I'm watching the clock. I told you in show prep, we got a new header coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
I don't want to turn this into a commercial for Kerr Lakeside, but we have a national 1012 bolt maker that was put in service. We bought it brand new, like in 1973 or 74. It makes 5/8 diameter socket head cap screws and 3/4 diameter socket head cap screws. There's a couple of long lengths, a 1/2 inch, that also get run on that machine. But it's an important piece of equipment. If it was an airplane, it would be grounded.
Now, please tell me this story is going to wind up on the tariff issue. Please.
It is. So anyhow, my son Alex was after me 2 years ago to order this Edgecroft bolt maker. I'm a national guy. And to this day, they make a great machine. They're Ohio-based. If we needed parts, we can run a truck up to Tiffin and be back in like 3 hours. But National doesn't make bolt makers anymore. Edgecroft does. And the difference there is if we would have bought a National machine, we'd have to buy the header, we'd have to buy a pointer, we'd have to buy a threader. Lots of millions of dollars to do that. Edgecroft makes a bolt maker, which means the coil comes into one end of the machine and a finished screw, threads come, and the head mark comes out the other for about half the money that we would have had to invest in brand new equipment with, the threader or the header and the hip or the pointer from National. And there would be some advantages. National's machine, had some features that would be nice, but not necessary. But anyhow, so we ordered this machine from Edgecroft. I'm not going to get specific, but anybody knows anything about machines of that size, this is a multi-million-dollar investment. And at the time we placed the order, the tariff was 14%. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if it was the King of Belgium, that's where the machine's going to be made, or their prime minister started chirping at President Trump about, like, you got no business talking about Greenland. I'm thinking, will you shut up? Because Trump's going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say 100% tariff.
Yeah.
Now, we need this machine. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm kind of come to terms with this. It's going to be what it is. If that ship is pulling into wherever they're going to unload the machine, New York or Baltimore or New Orleans, before it hits the dock and Trump raises the tariffs going up. And one of the things that needs to be understood, the Supreme Court is hearing some issues with his tariff authority. But the Section 232 tariffs, which basically are applied to steel and steel derivatives, like fasteners, because they're made of steel. Well, this machine is made of steel. And he has threatened to slap the 232 derivative tariffs on machine tools that are imported into the United States. I don't know where that stands. Now, I'm not serious about this, but I jokingly told somebody I might rent a warehouse in Mexico until this all blows over. Have the machine delivered down there and let it sit there. But in the meantime, we're making parts on our 1012. It should make close to 3,000 finished pieces an hour. We're lucky if we get 2,000. So we're behind. It's just, I wish I'd have done this 2 years ago. But one of the things, I'm not letting any secrets out, our cash position today is much better than it was 2 or 3 years ago. It just, some obligations we had then have been, paid off. And this is easier to do. So we got this machine coming. It's due to ship sometime maybe in April. I'm telling people by the time we see it, plug it in, get it turned on and making pieces, it'll probably be furnishing finished goods inventory sometime in July or August. I'm excited about this. The other thing we did in the meantime, by accident, we found out about a National 3/8 4MAX. It's a used machine, and there was a Hartford 10400 threader, part of the package deal. My son Alex said, hey, this is what they're asking for it. I said, buy it. Because if we ever need this stuff, which we will eventually, it won't be available. So anyhow, we're doing a lot of rearranging of the factory to make room for this equipment that's on the way. The good news is our service level has not been what I would like it to be the last couple of years. Once these machines are in the building, under power, making parts, those problems will be behind us. And believe me, it's a big investment. But I'm happy to tell everybody that's listening to this that we are committed to the sustainability of my company. And I said that on purpose because a lot of people say, hey, I run a sustainable business. And I ask them, what do you mean by that? Well, and you get a word salad. We recycle our scrap and our waste. Me investing in machines means my business is going to be around 50 years from now. Yeah, I sell my scrap and it gets recycled. They even recycle my beer cans. Anybody knows me knows I probably produce a lot of them.
Awesome.
Scrap is worth a lot of money, Eric.
Awesome. Yes, it is, Charlie. Thank you for bringing it. Yeah. That's great to hear, Charlie. Yeah. One of the things I love about visiting Kerr Lakeside, which I've done several times over the years, is some of this old warhorse machinery that you guys have running, and it's, of course, maintained to a fare thee well, and it just does such a great job for you. But you've also got this mix of newer stuff in, and you guys just keep rolling. So, I'm glad to hear this.
Actually, I can hardly understand how you can keep one of that big bloody cold-headed machine running for nearly 50 years. I mean, really.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're Nationals. National makes a good machine. And, like I said, if National still made bolt makers, we might have bought a National instead of a Netchcroft. Now, one thing that I will tell you, though, because we went up to Detroit. Netchcroft's got a facility up there, and their service team, this would be the guy that would, if we had some issues, would be responsible for making the machine, work right. The guy was very impressive. He knew the equipment. It was like, okay, I walked out of there thinking any reservations I had about buying a machine that wasn't built in Tiffin by National, going with Netchcroft wasn't going to be a problem for me.
Okay, that's good.
Well, you got to make shifts occasionally. Case in point, I've been wearing the Kerr Lakeside hat as my official fishing hat for a couple of years, as you know. And then recently you told me you couldn't get the kind that you had before with the silver brim and everything like that. So now you have the all blue model. Took me a little while to get used to it, Charlie, but now I'm really digging this thing.
Well, I'm a little bit annoyed that the company that made those hats discontinued that version of it, because going back to the mid-1990s, I coached a travel baseball team, and the team's colors coincidentally were that color blue and that color silver. And of course, I sponsored the team, so you had the Kerr Lakeside logo on this. Oh, everything looked cool. So I kind of stuck with that color scheme. That way, if I wear my coach's jersey, which is, a real baseball jersey, everything matches.
Right. Very shrewd, Charlie.
So you're trying to take over GQ in your attire on the field?
Nah, I tell you what, that's, I don't spend a lot of money on promotional materials, but hats, like we always leave some hats. In the summertime, it's the baseball hats. In the wintertime, it's the knit beanies. For truck drivers, like a lot of our customers come in will call. There's nothing better than someone advertising for you wearing a hat or a T-shirt. This is a little bit off color, but not too off color. I was in Chicago several years ago for the Midwest Fastener Association tabletop show, and these two girls are walking through the aisles that looked like they could have been Victoria's Secret models, and I gave them two hooded sweatshirts.
Typical MWFA event.
So anyhow, they put them on and started walking around the hall. I said, American Fastener Journal, Link, Fastener Technology International, you guys, you're looking at $50,000 worth of advertising right now. And they were so grateful. Like, wow, we can't believe you're being so generous. I said, all you got to do is wear it around. Now, who knows what they could have thrown them away when they left the hall. I don't know. But you did not have to come to my table to see Kerr Lakeside's logo.
There's another shrewd move. Well, I'll tell you something else you should think about strongly. I know you weren't out in Vegas this last time, but I'm sure you heard the reports about your booth placement. Did you get wind of that?
Nah, I'm trying to think. I look at it like this. I am going to go to Phoenix because I like Phoenix.
Well, hang on a sec. Your team was out there and they were astounded because you were right next to this giant array of pipes. And I think it was it was either like the HVAC or the main switch system for the sprinklers.
Yeah, it looked like electrical disconnect box.
Yeah, and I walked by before the show opened. I said, don't worry about it, guys. They'll put some drapery over that for you, I'm sure, before the show opens and everything, but they didn't.
Well, in all honesty, stuff like that wouldn't bother me. If they put us in a room that no one knew was there, that'd be different. But when you go to a show like Vegas, and I've said this before, now it's going to be in Phoenix, and people, when they say, if you're in this industry and they say Vegas, they know you're talking about, I don't even know what the official name of the show is, but you're talking about the Fastener show that happens every fall. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to say Vegas has moved to Phoenix?
Well, we're calling it the Vegas show in Phoenix.
Okay, you see, all right, you read my mind. But Debbie Lance, our assistant sales manager, regularly keeps a record of everybody that visits our booth. And it's either existing customers or people who could buy from us and don't, or don't buy as much from us as they could. And when you look at that list, it would take one person a year to travel around the country to make in-person, face-to-face sales calls with all those people. So the location of the booth, if it doesn't interfere with those people coming and giving us FaceTime, I'm not going to get too upset about it.
So you wouldn't mind if you turned up there and there was a bloody great support column in the middle of your booth then?
No, it just depends. If it doesn't impede, some of the people that I really would, desire visit our booth, they know where to find us. They got a list, everybody that they, want to visit, and they check it off. And, I think the easiest way for me to explain this is I've been in this industry since I started working in the factory, packing screws when I was like 12 or 13 years old. I only worked a couple hours a day. It was just, something, keep my old man, he could keep an eye on me.
Some things never change, Charlie.
That would have been like in 1970, okay? I've been doing this for a long time. If the location of my exhibit space at a trade show is the most serious problem that I have to deal with this year, I got smooth sailing ahead of me.
Okay.
I just told you a minute ago, I might end up with 100% tariff on a machine that I got on order.
Right. And puts it in perspective.
Yeah, it sure does,
Well, that's a very healthy attitude, and I admire and respect it deeply. So that's great. And I also very much appreciate you being here on your time off. Before we let you slide down the slopes out of here, let me ask you one more bicycle question, because this has really been plaguing me, and you're one of the most hardcore bicyclists that I know. I see these guys flying around my area all the time on these bikes that you don't even have to pedal, which
e-bikes.
Is that what it is? I guess I'm betraying my my age here, but it's something that never would have occurred to me. All my bikes that I've had in my life, you had to pedal like a banshee, to get anywhere. How does it make you feel when you're out there and you're cruising along, doing what you do by your own horsepower, and then you see one of these guys whizzing by you?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I frequently ride in the Cleveland Metro Park Rocky River Reservation. It's a beautiful trail. It goes from Lake Erie in Lakewood, Ohio, all the way out to North Royalton. It's 24 miles each way. And I've made the whole thing at least 2 or 3 times a summer. And there have been a couple times, I usually pedal at about 12 miles an hour when I'm on flat surface and I don't have a heavy headwind. There have been a couple times these guys, keep in mind, this is joggers, people with baby carriages. Okay, for our listeners in Chicago, think of the lakefront trail on a Sunday morning, okay? Except I'm in the woods instead of next to the lake. These guys, I can tell they're going close to 30 miles an hour. So one day I flagged over a ranger. I said, this can't be allowed. They're going to kill somebody. If they want to go in the street and go that fast, fine. Yep. And the ranger said that the rule is you're not allowed to put these things under power when you're on the trail. But the ranger physically would have to see them going at a speed that would just be impossible, like going up a small hill at 30 miles an hour. So I'm going to, work on trying to figure out who I can take this up with. In a street, I don't have a problem with it. Like I used an e-bike. I went on a bike trip in Croatia in 2019. It was very hilly terrain, and I put the battery assist on when I'd go up a hill. I'm in good shape. I could have never done that trip without that. But there's people that are riding these things on flat ground, on multi-purpose trails, and that's not where these things belong. Someone is going to get killed. So I take a dim view of them. I mean, you want to ride it on a busy street where the speed limit's 35 miles an hour, go at it. Stay off of my bike path.
There you go. We won't even get into the carbon emissions aspect of it and the implications for it.
Well, here's the deal.
Do you wear a helmet when you travel?
It depends. When I'm on that trail, yes. When I'm out puttering around the neighborhood by the office, not necessarily, because it's residential streets back there and there's very little traffic. That bonehead that hit me was either texting or plugging an address into his phone. I guarantee you he was looking
on
at
Instagram
or something, Yeah. But when I'm riding my bicycle, I'm still leaving a carbon footprint, because I use the term, I ride it with some aggressiveness. I like to, not kill myself, but it's a workout. So I'm huffing and puffing. Okay, well, every time I exhale, I'm contributing to the carbon content of the atmosphere.
Yes, but we're not really measuring that part of it.
Yet.
Yet. Now, we do measure emissions from cows.
We don't want this, guys.
Interesting one. No. And other animals. In New Zealand, it would be sheep, okay?
Okay, well, here's another emission. It's a little bit after 11 o'clock here in California. That means it's a little bit after 3 o'clock, take that back. It's a little after 2 o'clock back in Cleveland. In about an hour, I'm going to crack open a PBR. Now, when I pour it in the glass and the bubbles, start fizzing, that's carbon dioxide that's being released into the atmosphere. Am I going to have to figure out how to capture that?
I hate to say it, Charlie, but if some people have their way.
Yes.
Well, I'll leave you with this. Remember what I told the guy that hit me? If I get a colonoscopy because you ran me over, I'm going to hire a lawyer. If there's one of those busybodies is listening to this podcast and says, that guy, he's being sarcastic and he's, coming up with these far-flung hyperbolic. The guy actually has a good idea. Let's make it happen. It'll be all your fault.
We can tax that as well.
All right, Charlie. Well, we can always depend on you to come in and go out with a flurry, and you did not disappoint this time.
All right. Well, anyhow, let's do this. My machine coming from Europe, like I said, should be up and running in August. I'm going to have an event, not necessarily an open house, but I'm going to be inviting people into the plant to look at it. Mr. Dudas and your crew. Brian, you're not based in Cleveland, are you?
No, I'm in Chicago.
Okay, well, but anyhow, you'll be one of the first people to get invited to come down and look at it.
Hey, I loved my tour around your place. I loved it. And I particularly sat watching that giant cold header and just think every time it banged out of bolt, the whole floor shook.
Well, this one's not quite that big, but it's the next size down. Like I said, I'm excited about this. This tariff thing hanging over my head is, I'll admit it, there's nothing I can do about it. I just want, the president to let cooler heads prevail.
How are you going to do that?
Yeah, well, maybe if he'd shut up.
Well, here's the thing. He keeps
send him a bottle of sleeping pills. You might sleep through the night.
He keeps insisting that the exporting country is going to pay the tariff.
I know.
I am going to pay the tariff, regardless of what it is. It shows up, whoever the freight forwarder is that's going to handle the machine, you have, because we import some parts we don't make. So I see these invoices. The freight forwarder settles the duty before they release the machine to me. I am paying that, or Kerr Lakeside's paying that.
Yeah, I know.
And we're going to pay it because I need the machine. And
everyone who knows that except the people who are proposing tariffs, unfortunately.
Well, it's a two-sided coin. We compete with product that's made in Taiwan primarily. A little bit in India, not so much, and there's some South American fastener manufacturers. In theory, the tariffs could make me more competitive. But if the equipment that I need makes it impossible the tariff makes it impossible for me to bring that stuff into the building, I'm not going to be able to make any screws at all, regardless of my competitive situation.
You were mentioning the Supreme Court a little while back, and of course, we were expecting a ruling a couple weeks ago, and it didn't come. You putting your money down on either side of that one?
Well, I've been following it. My expectation is the court is going to rule in such a way that Donald Trump starts having a Twitter storm. He's going to be complaining and, degrading the judges. What I'm afraid of is he's going to say, okay, fine. Anything that's made out of steel or aluminum is going to have 100% Section 232 attached to it.
I don't think he knows anything to that detail, Charlie. It'll be people working for him. He wouldn't know.
He's got people in his ear that do. And
he wouldn't even know what a cold header was or a company making nuts and bolts.
No, well.
That's right. Good thing you're out in Tahoe and you're going to spend the afternoon gazing upon the slopes, if not sliding down them. We sure do appreciate you being here, Charlie. We're going to take you up on that offer in August or whenever it happens.
Very much so. Okay.
Good to hear you rolling forward.
No, I'm feeling, we didn't talk about business conditions in general. In 10 seconds or less, I'm feeling pretty good about 2026.
Glad to hear it. Well, you're right on board with the FLI then. We'll let you get back to it. We've been talking with Charlie Kerr, Kerr Lakeside, of course. Always appreciate you being here with us, Charlie.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. You're doing the industry a very valuable service by engaging people in discussions that disseminate information that people in the industry might not have otherwise, at least under timely circumstances. So my hat is tipped to you.
I appreciate that.
All right, well, listen. Adios, amigos.
Okay, adios.
And we'll be back to close this one out in just a minute. It's Fully Threaded Radio.
It's a bird. It's a plane. It's my offer from Eurolink.
You requested a fast turnaround, and Eurolink aims to please.
Does it include those metric fasteners that everyone else no-quoted me?
Certainly. As the premier U.S. distributor of DIN and ISO metric fasteners, Eurolink fulfills every quote they receive.
They even quoted the A480 stainless steel socket head cap screws. That's impossible.
Many of our dreams seem impossible, but when you email sales@eurolinkfss.com, they soon become inevitable. Eurolink provides fast, hassle-free quotes, fair pricing, and timely deliveries.
How fast can I get my orders shipped out to me?
Faster than a slow boat from China.
Thanks, Eurolink.
That's the Eurolink way. Hard to find metric fasteners delivered.
From thousands of in-stock fasteners, including NAS and MS hardware, the custom parts built to your specifications, MW Components delivers. With U.S. manufacturing across 8 locations, we offer cold heading, precision machining, fully custom solutions, and engineering support for challenging applications. From rapid prototyping to full production, we deliver the capabilities and skill for your most demanding needs. Learn more at mwcomponents.com/fasteners.
Hi, I'm Linda from LindFast, and around here, they call me the mom of the family. From stainless to metric to domestic manufacturing, our family provides the toughest industrial solutions you can find. If it holds your world together, my family makes it all. We deliver every order with precision, innovation, and the kind of reliability only a strong family can offer. LindFast Solutions Group. One family, endless solutions.
Hi, this is Scott Kemp from Atlas Distribution Services, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
So, Bri, I was texting with Charlie, trying to get some photos out of him.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
He sends me a picture of a guy laying on a stretcher, like a snow stretcher, covered in a orange blanket with a medic standing next to him on skis.
Well, I've seen a few of those.
Yeah, well, apparently this was the leader of his trip. And
oh, hell.
Yeah, I don't know if it was super serious. I'm gathering it wasn't, but they evacuated him. He must have taken a tumble.
Yeah.
So Charlie was not on the slopes, but I don't know. We'll get the full story.
Just as well.
He's always on some kind of an adventure. I would like to thank Charlie Kerr with Kerr Lakeside for taking a little time out of his Tahoe vacation to be with us today.
Yeah.
I know Charlie Kerr fans always enjoy his segments with us. Also, Danielle Riggs with Würth Industry USA shared her analysis of the latest EU CBAM developments. And Jun Xu with Brighton Best International sat in with Mike McNulty today. Amazing job, guys. Thanks for carrying the show for us. Carmen Vertullo and Marco Rodriguez had their regular segments today, too. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.
The title sponsors of Fully Threaded Radio are Star Stainless and Brighton Best International. Fully Threaded Radio is also sponsored by Buckeye Fasteners, BTM Manufacturing, Eurolink Fastener Supply Service, Fastener Technology International, Cressa, Goebel Fasteners, InSequel Software, Jlan Franco, Fastener Fair USA, MW Components, Solution Industries, Volt Industrial Plastics, and Würth Industry USA. If you listen to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or one of the other players, please give us a review. Give us a share, too, while you're at it. We're trying to grow that part of it, and apparently that helps the podcast grow, so appreciate that very much. Also, take a look at the fullythreaded.com page where we have these show notes pages now. Trying to enhance those, bring a little more value to every episode.
Yeah, the Fully Threaded has been left a little bit for some time, and then Eric, because some other people have been putting a lot of work into actually turning it into something that's a much better logical site actually now.
Well, the framework has come together, so it's at a point where we can start doing some interesting things. All right, appreciate all that, folks, and appreciate you listening in as always. Next time on the podcast, we're going to have Chapman Revercombe with Würth Industry sitting in with McNulty. And Bri, we're also going to jam in somehow, I don't know, maybe we'll do an unthreaded episode where we can hear all about your adventures You and Lynn apparently were doing some amazing things. I saw a few of the photos, and I was just talking about these blog pages. On the last episode, I put one of you with two guys in turbans. I don't know, you're standing in front of, what was it, the Temple of Horus?
No, it was statue to the god Horus. And it was meant to be a picture of Lynn and I, but these guys were there and they wanted pictures of them instead. So that's what got taken.
Well, they must have known who you are.
Yeah, Horus is the god of rebirth or something. He was Isis's son.
Yeah, all that mythology. It's a string you can just keep on pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and never seem to get to the center of it. But we'll take a crack at it next time. So,
okay.
One thing I got to say, though, is it seems like you missed a really choice marketing opportunity there. You know, I thought you were going to have a fully threaded hat on in that shot.
Interesting. I did have a fully threaded hat with me, actually, but I must have left it off in that one, actually.
All right. Well, that's one of the things that makes you so lovable. You know, you're just.
Yeah, no, here we are.
Completely never thinking about the
proper marketing, I know.
Yeah. God bless you.
Yeah, no.
And God bless all of you for listening to the podcast, folks. We really do appreciate it, and we'll skedaddle. Talk to you again in the very near future.
Right. We appreciate it.
We'll put this one in the sarcophagus. All right.
Yeah. Right.
For Brian Musker, this is Eric Dudas. Get out there, sell some screws. We'll talk to you next time.
Right.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fastener's Clearinghouse. Music provided by Audionautics.
My name is Joseph Oltrauer. We got really good people. Work ethic, you know. You do a little more than what you're getting paid for. You know, I'm a great believer in that. That's how you get ahead.
We are Volt.
If you grow too fast, you can go broke real quick. And growing too slow is not as dangerous, but it's boring.
We are Volt.
We know how to build the tools, and if you don't have the tools, you can't do anything.
Volt Industrial Plastics, makers of the world's finest plastic fasteners.